TSN. This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
It's that hometown crowd, it's in our blood, and even when the clock runs.
All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app. Your home smart speaker up on TSN 4. Brian Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles, McLennan.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Guys, there was a lot of breakdown last night, like a lot of kind of if you were going to the Oilers side, you could do the blame pie that Hayes does, like talk about different guys' games, things that didn't work out. But you know what took the biggest beat down all last night? Do you know?
No.
What?
The Hut.
The Hut got demolished last night.
I swear, I've been reading Twitter, and I'm like, there is a Stanley Cup about to be handed out, and people are attacking me and the Hut. Like, the Hut turned into a porta potty last night, and a messy one.
Yes.
One that hadn't been emptied in years.
End of a festival.
Dude,
End of a festival.
End of a rave festival.
Yep.
And I'm watching this, and I'm like, guys, slow down. You started it, Hayes, where you're like, Ekholm and Bouchard, like, behind it. And I'm like, all Ekholm. Bouchard got punted from the Hut last night.
He was brutal last night. And
his
that first
partner was
goal,
worse.
I mean, Noodles, you can speak to it because Ekholm throws an absolute grenade at him. Just a horrible play.
He was horrible the last three games of the series.
He was.
Yes,
and
he was.
You're right. But this play alone, it's 4 feet in the air.
It's an awful
behind
play.
him.
Yeah,
and then he gets
awful pass.
walked outside, inside. Like, Ekholm wasn't right. And again, I'm not – we're going to break it all down. I watch these guys live, and, listen.
Skinner's got to stop that,
Well,
too,
that's
man.
the thing. At some point, like, there's room – and I saw your tweet. There was room for improvement on all three players there.
Oh, did he have a goalie tweet last night?
Well, no, he had a tweet just going Ekholm to Bouchard to Skinner.
All three of them had blame.
Right. But they and 100% right. But I would love to hear, and again, there's no excuses. Florida was a master class. They deserve it. They're back-to-back champions. Lots of talk about them today. Ekholm obviously hurt, like playing like awful. That's the worst I've seen him play in a long time. He looked decent in Dallas. I don't know if he had anything going on. But, like, they couldn't find that Game 5. I don't know if you guys – I mean, I didn't get to talk to you about it. He got walked by Marchand. He was on the wrong side. Like, they were playing him on the right side because they couldn't play that Stetcher. Well, they chose to put Stetcher in the lineup instead of Klingberg. Like, just things like that, small details. But you're right. Like, that was Bouchard – the second goal was outrageous.
Yes,
because,
the Hut, man.
Like,
he drop-kicked the Hut.
But it comes down to it, like, yeah.
Why does the Hut have to get involved?
Well, because he had given that puck away at the far blue line, and he worked to get back, but there was, like, no structure in their game. It's like, hey, we're going to chase this puck around.
I know, but why does that shot,
downtown?
like, Matthew Tkachuk's a great player, but that was honestly, like, once again, what I call a standard warm-up shot, wrist shot.
Yeah, there was a screen in front, but I just – you need a save. Like, we're going to break
What about
this
the
down.
blocker? It looked like he was putting one of my cat toys down on the ground in the kitchen for him to play with. It was just like
that was curtains. I'm sorry. It was 2-0.
Man.
This shot, it goes off his shoulder. It's not even the blocker. He shoulders it.
The third one was wild, man.
That's the
wild scene.
That
like,
was
this
curtains,
puck's coming
guys.
at you, and
That
it's
was
just like,
curtains.
anybody want this? I'm like, what the hell was that?
But the context of it, guys, they had been trapped in their zone for a minute.
Yes.
Their top line is out there. They are straight-legged. They are Forrest Gump with the stilts on. And a wrist shot from the boards where Skinner can just grab that and go, I'm going to slow things down here, and we're going to get a face-off, and we're going to get out of the period maybe 2-0, or maybe try and have a push near the end of the second. That was the dagger. I'm sorry. That was the dagger for me.
Yeah, okay, so we're a few minutes in. We've mentioned the Hut. We've mentioned Bouchard. We've mentioned Ekholm. We've mentioned Skinner. We haven't mentioned the big boys yet.
Yeah, they were quiet, too.
Awful
again.
last night again. And that's bearing the lead for me because there's a lot of different things. The primary story that comes out of it is how great Florida is. Like, they put on clinics against Tampa, late in the series against Toronto. Carolina was a waste of their time. Just move. Get out of the way. And games 3, 5, and 6 in a cup final, that's as well as a team can possibly play. Like,
That's
just
exactly
completely
it.
Right.
controlled everything. They are exceptional from top to bottom. And they're
do.
worthy champions, and they're the best team in the league. And they have been the best team in the league, I think, by miles for the last couple of years. And it doesn't feel as if they're slowing down. They're somehow getting stronger in like fatigue. I don't even know if it's going to apply to them.
No.
So that's first and foremost, Panthers, get your flowers.
Right.
But Connor McDavid, in those games I just mentioned, blended. You'd have no idea this guy was one of the 20 best players in the world. Forget the best player. Completely blended in. And I know that's in large part because of Florida, because they did it to Kucherov in the first round. They did it to Matthews in the second round. They certainly did it to whoever was at the top of the mountain in Carolina in the third round. And they did it. Aho, I guess, yes, and Svechnikov and those guys for sure in the third round. And, again, credit where credit's due. But you're the best player in the world. And 3 massive games where he just completely blended in.
Yeah.
And you need help. You need your team. You know, I thought he described it after the game actually perfectly. He just said their forecheck, they were on top of us, they smothered it. We had nothing.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to break through. But you've got to break through, man. You're Connor McDavid. And
He
Leon
also
Draisaitl.
said we just kept doing the
to.
same things and smashing our head off the wall, which was kind of an interesting comment.
I thought Draisaitl at least, like Draisaitl's more physical, right? So I noticed him a lot more. McDavid, they were on top of him to the point where, like, every time he got on the ice, there was somebody 2 feet away from him. Like, he couldn't wind it up. He had one wind up down the wall, and he ended up getting hit pretty hard. I think it was by Forsling. Like, that Forsling just pinched him off by the end, and you could tell. Which was weird for me, guys. I thought Game 5 was just they were out to lunch and they had no legs or whatever. Game 6, there were plays they couldn't make a pass. Mm-hmm. Like, I understand Florida being in the right position, being on top of things, but go back to that first goal. Ekholm fires a 60-foot, 4-foot pass, like off a guy's shin pad. That's a D-to-D play with a little saucer in it. There was one little measly stick in there on a forecheck. Like, these are the second goal. Bouchard carries it up through the neutral zone. Like, put a little saucer on it when you're kicking it wide. It just gets like, I thought their details stunk. I thought their urgency stunk. I've got lots of thoughts in watching.
Jamie, it's the same as
what
we said about the Leafs in games 5 and 7. It was like we brought up the point, like, how could Craig Berube be losing it on their team in Game 7 where he's like, get going or whatever he said? The Edmonton Oilers were described in Game 5 as lethargic. Last night you just said it. They had no energy, no zip, no poise with the puck. It's like, I don't know. Maybe we're at a point, and I'm not going to, like, back off my remarks, but it's like maybe it's just at a point that's what Florida does to you. Like, they're just so good, they just make you play like garbage. Is that possible? Is that too much of a stretch?
It's fair, but I've got 2 things on my takeaways when it comes to Edmonton. And, these are pretty harsh things, but I think it's fair to say on two levels, okay? One is courage, okay? And I use this word, and I'm not using it lightly. But, and it's going to apply to anybody who plays against Florida. It's not about fighting, but it's about 50-50 battles. There were battles last night I was witnessing that was a 50-50 battle, and a guy's bailing out, turning away from the like. You don't want to get hit in the Stanley Cup. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final, you're worried about getting hit. You're like, there was 3 or 4, like, I made mental notes going, that's a soft play, that's a soft play. And you're right, like, that's Florida to a T. They're physical, they're in your face. But I'm sorry, like,
soft,
you need.
Imagine saying that soft
but
plays.
That's okay. And we can go through, like, Florida's opponents right through the playoffs, and so maybe they just wear you down by games 5, 6, 7, you name it. But secondly is IQ. And, like, Florida's a really high IQ team. Like, and their 2 best players are elite defensively. Like, Sam Reinhart, he put a clinic on.
Yep.
But this guy away from the puck, there's a reason
Unreal.
why.
Barkov, it's incredible.
Barkov, but thinking the game, Florida, outthinks the opponent. They go, okay, how are we going to get underneath their skin? Okay, we're going to agitate, turn away. It's Tkachuk, it's Marchand. They're ahead of you. They're 3 steps ahead of you between the ears. And they wait for dumb plays, and then they expose you. And that's where I think you can have, and again, I'm being harsh with these words, you can have a few guys that don't think the game very well on your team. If they're talented or whatever, you can't have too many of them because they get exposed. And to me, going through some of these games, watching, throughout the playoffs, smart players find a way to adapt. And players that just have talent and kind of fumble around, they play into a game plan. And Florida executed their game plan to a T.
Yeah.
They waited for Edmonton to screw up, and then they just went the other way and scored. That's what happened.
And that is exactly it. And like what Florida does better than any team I can recall is they just poke at your frustration.
Yes.
And it builds and builds and builds to the point where one of two things happens. You just say, screw it, I'm done, we can't do it. Or you spiral out of control. And that is what is so brilliant about these guys, because part of it is I think you're overthinking it. You're so frustrated because it doesn't work the first time, so you don't even try it the second time. Or the second or third time you try something stupid because you're like, they're always there, they're in the right spot, like you said, IQ, and they're waiting for you, to the point where, again, it kind of puts you in a bad place where you've built them up like boogie. They're players. Like they're going to make mistakes. Florida makes mistakes, but if you're not ready for them, or if you think they're never coming, it's like you're not on your toes to expose it. And that I think is the credit of Florida, and how they're prepared and how they consistently play the same way. And then the other one is the frustration where it just spirals out, where we saw it last night. Like Game 6 of a Cup final, the Oilers are smashing sticks and yelling and screaming, and it's Evander Kane gets kicked out and doesn't come back out. Like they just poke you and poke you and poke you to the point where they are who they are. And Florida, on top of it, they have all the talent that they have. They've got a great goaltender.
Well, that's the other thing.
There's just a lot of different things at play that just make them very, very difficult to beat. And I don't know how they're going to slow down. I mean, I know Bennett's up and Marchand is up and Ekblad's up, and all of that is true. And, we've got a week and a half, 2 weeks to figure out how this is all going to sort itself out. But let's say two of them leave. Let's say one of them leaves. You still have Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, Lundell. I think Bennett's going to stay. Jones was great. Forsling's unreal. Bob's got another year. Now, Bob's not young. That is coming at some point. Bobrovsky is not a young player.
How old is he, 34?
I think he'll be 37 next season to begin the year. So he's not young. A lot of miles on him. That could be where it cracks first, is Bob hits a wall. Right. And then that changes the whole complexion of your team in a way, because, the goaltender is so important. But, you look at back-to-back Stanley Cup champs since 1970. There's not a lot of them. They went to the Cup final 3 years ago, and they completely redeemed themselves. And, it's somewhat of a tragedy from the Oilers' perspective, because, you will your way back. It's like going through it's like a gruesome injury. You blew your Achilles out, and then you get back, and then you blow it out again. And you're like, we got to restart the rehab. Yeah. And that's where the Oilers are. Like, they blew through the West outside of the first 2 games against L.A. They just steamrolled Vegas, steamrolled Dallas, and then they run into Florida and they look completely outmatched. Well, they were just completely beat from top to bottom.
Once again, we're not stats guys on this show, but the time led in the series, insanity.
Crazy.
It was.
And it got even crazier last night.
Exactly.
It did. The one thing, like I try to, a few days from now, we'll probably, you won't look at it differently, but I want to get more information and not let emotions and, it fresh, all of that type of stuff. But I think one of the things, and I said this to Struddy, we were chatting, and I said, that team, that Edmonton team, they sputtered into the playoffs. The first 2 games were like that team. And I don't know if you saw Matthew Tkachuk's comments saying, we play like a team. They played more like individuals. I don't know if you saw that comment, which was, I thought it was a knife, a dagger, a pretty good one.
I think it's almost unnecessary. Like, this is the thing about Tkachuk that, like, there's a part of me that loves it because he embraces who he is, and he's like, this is what I am, and I'm just going to terrorize the whole league. But he's constantly jabbing at the teams that he beats. Like, he jabbed at Tampa. I don't know if it's a rivalry, I guess. Jabs at Toronto by saying the toughest series was going to be the first one and the last one, not the Toronto series.
Yeah.
And then he's like, to your point, we won because we're a team, and they didn't win because they're individuals. And when they have struggles, they just look at one guy, and it's got to be McDavid. And then on top of it, he goes, McDavid's just too good. He'll win a Stanley Cup at some point, wherever it happens to be. Yeah. Which is almost an indication, like, you got to leave Edmonton in order for that to happen.
Well, I saw, like, what I got from his comments, too, and this is where I was going, was, like, that team never played together. Like, you get Wallman, you get Kapanen, like, they never played together as a group, and it showed. Like, I thought when
but Jamie, it didn't show when they dusted Vegas, when they dusted Dallas.
Hear me out. Against a very structured team like Florida, Edmonton's lack of structure really showed. So the familiarity of doing the same, like Florida, like they just put Marchand in, and we were talking to Seth Jones last night, and it was unbelievable what he said. When I came from Chicago, he goes, I did weeks and weeks of video with the coaches because they play a different style than the rest of the league. They want their D to do this. He was going through it. It was unbelievable. He was saying, he goes, I was in the video room every day learning how they want to play, how they want me to play, and how I needed to adjust my game to fit in with them. And I was like, okay, that's unbelievable, like, insight, because Paul Maurice is a really detailed coach. And I thought to myself, like, okay, define how Edmonton plays. Like, define their defensive structure. Like, there's a looseness to it, right? Where Florida's just really buttoned up. So I guess my point is like, that's what I was looking at, was that team continuity.
I know. But you saying Florida was a structured team, Dallas is a structured team, so Vegas Golden Knights are a very structured team.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. They got murdered, man. They got dummied.
That's where I'm having a tough time finding the middle ground, because it's, one thing to tire pump the Panthers because it's deserved, and another thing to be like, well, the Oilers, they just got, like, it's in a crazy way. They were worse this year than last year, and they were down 0-3 last year. Like, they were down 3-0 in that series, and yet this one felt way more unbalanced, if that's possible. Like, and they won game one.
Well, you could argue that Florida's better this year. That's the crazy
I'd agree. Yet Edmonton thought they were better, I think. I don't know if they are or not. And Hyman being hurt, maybe they weren't. Maybe they shouldn't have felt that way. I'm not sure. But Florida, I do think, was better. Yet again, it was like Edmonton punched first. They hit first. They won game one. And game two goes to double overtime. And yet by the end of it, it felt, even more unbalanced. And, some of that has to fall on the Oilers. Like, it can't, the whole league can't just say, well, we can't compete with Florida. Like, that's sports, man. You got to find a way to break through. You got to find a way in your second year, because everything you just said is, I think, fascinating from Jones' perspective. But you know who also has tape? The Oilers. To watch them.
That's my point.
You know what they're going to do.
That's the crazy thing.
And you couldn't find a way to stop it.
Yeah, that was my point, is like, they've got work to do on stuff that, should be ingrained. Now, again, maybe some turnover it wasn't ingrained, but that was my point, is how buttoned up Florida is. Edmonton got by on, hey, we can outscore, we can do this and that, and when push came to shove, it unraveled because they didn't have that structure. They didn't have, habits to fall back on, and it's easy to say we need better goaltending. They do. I'm sorry.
100%.
Like, if you look at,
the goaltending wasn't good enough.
They need better goaltending, but they also need, like, there's holes in that lineup that they need to fill.
That's the question, is how can you fill all these? Like, if you're turning over both goalies, I don't know if they will or not, but I would suggest, I don't know how you can bring Stuart Skinner back. I'll just say that bluntly.
Guys.
I don't know how you can.
If you brought the guys, the players, into the locker room, I think if you brought the coaches in too, and you were doing an unveiling, and you just pulled like a tarp off and said, guys, this is the goalies for this year, and it was Pickard and Skinnerd again, I don't know what the guys' reaction would be.
But you're right, but it's also letting them off the hook, too. It's letting, they made it to Game 7 last year and Game 6 this year with that goaltending. So then, and McDavid, 0 goals in, Game 7, Game 6, Game 5.
Yep.
Draisaitl, I thought, was really good.
I thought for the most part he was good through the series. Excellent. He scored 2 OT winners. Listen,
4
there's a McDavid. Over the course of the playoffs. I'm talking in the Cup final.
Okay, yeah.
But if you look at the McDavid story takes on a completely different complexion now. We've referenced it. Sid, his second time against the same team, won. Gretzky's second time won. Yeah. Mario in his prime went to back-to-back. They won both. To be a player of his status, who's already probably a top 10 player all time, to lose back-to-back Cup finals, and he's 10 years into the league, the Four Nations, that's the biggest winning team moment of his career as an NHL player. And now he's got to chase it again. And now he's got to try to get back to the dance. And his new deal will kick in next year. And Draisaitl's going to make more, and Bouchard's going to make more. It's going to get complicated. It's not going to get easier. And you're right. The biggest games, the 3 or 4 biggest games of his career, he hasn't played well enough. And, it may not have mattered. Maybe Skinner still doesn't get it done, or Ekholm throws a pizza, or Florida's just simply too good. Yeah. But no one can leave Game 5 and Game 6 of this series, or Game 7 of the Cup final last year. You can't leave the rink saying McDavid was unbelievable. You can't do it because it's not accurate.
No, you're right.
Ray Ferraro coming up. He'll join us on this and more. We'll play the McDavid clip from postgame for Ray. We'll get his take on it. Struddy is coming up today, unfortunately after an Oilers loss, but Struddy will join us. Maybe Chris Pronger steps in for Struddy.
Hey, it's press conference time at Edmonton, boys.
Oh, my God.
Press conference time.
It is. You're right.
We should have Prongs.
Imagine instead of Struddy, Prong steps in. That is a possibility. And one of the greatest videos I've ever seen, Noodles, you sent it to me about a half an hour ago. It is an all-time great video that we will play and have a full breakdown of later this afternoon. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
And OverDrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. The O-Dog will be back later this hour. We've got Struddy coming up. We got role play level of concern still to come, and the Cup was handed out last night in Florida. The Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions after going to the Cup final 3 straight years. Matthew Tkachuk after the game said, we have to be considered a dynasty now. That's a good question. I mean, historically, it's generally 3 in a row, 4 in a row.
Yeah.
But maybe in the Cap era, is it a Cap era dynasty? Are we changing the language? I'm not sure. Here's Ray Ferraro from ESPN. Ray, would you consider the Panthers a dynasty?
Yes, because
Okay.
I don't know that I've ever really seen the official Webster's Dictionary definition of what it is. Like, it's 3 finals in a row. Like,
Right.
Yes, I think so. And because it's kind of a made-up thing, the way they've done it, I think elevates them over some of the other teams.
Yeah.
How so? Like, what do you mean by that? The way they've
Well,
done
Noodles, you were there last night. Did that not look like a steamroller?
Yes. Yeah.
They look like they could have put together whoever they wanted to play on Edmonton, and it was not. It wasn't going to matter. I just think they're such an impressive team. Like they win in a way that's not familiar with the rest of the league. Like they have stars, of course they do, but like look at the awards that they win. They win the Selke.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't win the top scorer. They don't have a bunch of guys all over the all-star teams. They're big and deep, and like I tweeted today, like because it just came to my head, like that's what I remember the Islanders like the championship. Like that was a dynasty, right? That was 4 in a row, and I'm like, it's the same sort of thing. Like they're just big and tough and skilled, and they got a great goalie and a great coach, and that's why for me, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hayes makes a point, even if we could call them the modern-day dynasty with the cap implications. Ray Billy Zito said to us last night he thought that there was a chance he could keep all 3 guys. Do you think that is? I mean, do you think he's talking out of the side of his mouth, or do you think that there is a way that he could keep all 3 guys on that roster moving forward?
I don't know, like how. At the end of it, it's just math. Right. And I'm like, unless he's got a hole that he's got some other nickels buried in, like it's going to cost. Like, what is it? What is Ekblad going to cost? What is Marchand going to cost? What is?
It's not what they're going to cost, Ray. It's what other some other team might offer. Like Aaron Ekblad's got to go to them and say, "We'll give this guy someone's going to give him $10 million or offer him $10 million."
Okay, and what's a hometown discount? Is it taking $500,000 less a year, $1 million less a year, $4 million less a year? Like someone's going to blow one of these guys out of the water.
Yeah,
and I think it would be really hard to be able to make enough room to get all 3 back. Like I would suspect they're not going to have a backup goalie making $3.5 million next year. Like somehow that won't be the case. They'll save a little bit of money there. How are you going to fit if Marchand? I'm reading this stuff 4 times 8. Like how is that going to fit for a 3rd-line winger?
Right.
Like how are you going to do that? I would think in priority it's Bennett, Marchand. God, I hate to put Ekblad 3rd. But it kind of feels like one of the reasons they got Jones was that they were going to have to move past Ekblad at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Like I felt that was a this year plus future trade, and it certainly worked out like really solid. I mean, he was almost kind of reborn again to play in a way that I think we probably thought of Jones before he got buried in Chicago.
Ray, people get on our case about talking about Connor McDavid and his pending extension that can be signed on July 1st. I'll ask you so we don't have to really discuss it, but do you think it's a slam dunk automatic that he signs his extension July 1st?
No, not the first. I don't. I mean, there is. I mean, he's eligible right there. I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors that would go into him signing again for the 8-year term. And as much as people can speculate, like, what the hell do we know? Like, who knows what he's thinking? Who knows if he and Leon have a thing that when Leon signed it, that kind of was, yeah, I'm signing too. Like, you got to think they discussed it, right? Like, how would they not? It's I don't know. I wouldn't be in any great rush to sign if I had his ability, his, like, what he is. Like, he's different than everybody else. So the cap goes up to what, $100 million next year, and then it goes up, and then it goes up again the next year, right? Mm-hmm. I think they've announced that.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you wait until the next year? You can't sign an extension for 2 years from now. If you're doing it on a percentage of the cap, why wouldn't you wait until the time that you can maximize the percentage you're going to take? Say he's going to take 18%, not the max 20, but 18%. Well, 18% on July 1st won't be the same as 18% next July 1st. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it comes down to what he desires, like, where he wants to live, where he wants to play, what he thinks the team can be, and financially what he needs to make. And he's never said boo about this. So he would be really the only one that could dive into it. If somebody offered me an extension 1 year out, I would have signed it like, at 12:01 a.m. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have been all over that. He doesn't have to be. He can be as patient as he wants to be.
Yeah, he can do anything. Like, the deal's going to be there wherever he wants, whenever he's ready to sign it. With Ray Ferraro, let's play his clip post game. Here's Connor McDavid on what happened last night throughout the series.
I lost to a really good team. Nobody quit. Nobody threw the towel in. They're a heck of a team. They're the Stanley Cup champions back-to-back for a reason.
What's the difference in the series?
Obviously their forecheck was great. They tilted the rink. They were able to kind of stay on top of us all over the place. Never really able to generate any momentum up the ice. We kept trying the same thing over and over again, just banging our heads against the wall.
Is that players, coaches, management? Who's he sending that message to?
That's a big one, isn't it? Like, when he said it kind of, when you half listen to an interview and then you sit up. That's what I felt like when I was listening to that. Mm-hmm. Like the banging the head against the wall thing. I think they tried enough roster construction things that you could say, okay, they tried a different way, but they still got the same goalies. He's never, ever, ever going to come out and say that. But they were the second best team in goal in the finals. Skinner last year in the finals was really good. This year, well, clearly he wasn't. Is it maybe trying to attack a different way, a team that completely shut them down? Like, I don't know what you guys thought, but going to McDavid and Draisaitl that early in the game, given the finals that Nugent-Hopkins was having, I thought was a mistake. I'm like, if they don't score, now Florida, for the most part, gets a 3-minute break. Mm-hmm. Because nobody else is going to score. And so I think there's a little bit of that sprayed around. Like, we're trying the same things with the lineup. But what else? At a certain point, what else are you going to do? You don't have Hyman, so you're short, and you're short a really critical guy. They didn't get anything from their wingers, like nothing.
I wish Evander Kane, though, had stuck a few more guys. That would have been key for the Oilers.
Well, I thought he was their best chance to replace Hyman because he's big and that was a pancake in the series. Like, if we even go back a year to, basically a year here, they decided to sign Arvidsson and Skinner on July 1st, and they re-signed Henrique. Like, I don't know, would they have not been better not to sign any of those guys?
Yes.
And maybe you've got Broberg and Holloway. Like, you would have at least one of them. For sure you would. There's no debate on that. Because St. Louis didn't prep that offer sheet and didn't offer it until the third of those three guys was signed. And then Edmonton was in the jackpot. So for McDavid, you know, the banging your head against the wall, maybe there's some of, we're not better. They feel, I don't know what you guys think, they feel farther away now than they did last year at this time. And maybe that's because Florida was better, or certainly performed better. But it doesn't quite feel the same this year. Maybe that's just, you know, the fatigue of losing twice in a row, whatever. But that's what it felt like to me when I watched, certainly games 5 and 6.
Well, what else can be done? Like, this is for all four of us, but they've catered to McDavid a lot in a sense where it's, okay, it's your agent took over as the president or whatever. What is Jeff Jackson's role? What is he, president of the team?
President, hockey ops or whatever.
We got your junior coach. We got, you know, like to me, like at some point there has to be some moves here. Like I say, it starts in net because I think that you just need a different look. Like,
okay, Noodles, question, because you know the goalies so well. Like, how do you change that? They don't have oodles of cap space.
Well, who the hell's out there? Like, who would you get?
It's got to be a trade for somebody, but I there's no free agent that's going to upgrade that tandem. That's the thing. It's going to have to be a trade, and I don't know who's available and who's not. It seems like every team is a buyer, according to our insiders. There's no team that is going to throw the towel in at this point. But I think it starts there. But then you do have to look at roster construction, getting a little younger, a little quicker, a little bit different type of bite. Like, you know, we always talk about in this city, Ray, like, run it back because, you know, they made it to the finals or whatever. I think they have to have a different approach here. And you know, and it has to start in net just because that's a definition of insanity, is it not?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like the quarterback thing. If you've got two quarterbacks, that means you don't have one. Mm-hmm. If you keep telling everybody we got a goalie tandem, even though there are no Marty Brodeur 70-game guys anymore, but if you've got a tandem that you can't really decide who you want to start, then you got problems. Like, somebody's got to be a standalone, you know, 55-game guy, and if you don't have it, you're probably second best in a lot of series. I think you can get through that way during the regular season because, you know, the way travel is, and you can play a guy here, you get a rest there. In the playoffs, it's the teams that just can't rely on a guy, and Edmonton can't. I think they're on their back foot a little bit. You know, and we all know it. Just like it erodes confidence, it really does. You're never really sure what you're, you know, what you've got. We've got these friends. The guy is from the Netherlands. They spent a lot of time in Edmonton. He's a big Oilers fan. So we're watching Game 5. He goes, the one thing I see in goal with the Oilers is whoever's in goal, you want the other guy playing. And I was like, wow, that's pretty astute.
Yeah, that's well put.
Pretty funny.
How do you say it? Dutch.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. So it's like, whatever you got, we want the other guy.
Yeah.
Ray, I was looking at, like, teams. Like, it seems like, I don't know how Carolina vaults up there, but people are always talking about who wins the Cup next year. Oilers are all, like, Hayes, I don't know if you have the FanDuel odds for next year to win the Cup, but how on earth is Florida not at the top? Like, I see them winning again next year. And I know I say some stupid stuff, but who the hell's going to beat those guys, even if there's a couple pieces that leave?
Well, don't forget, so, like, if Bennett leaves or Ekblad leaves, or both of them, that's $13 million they've got to spend on cap space. And it's pretty clear they're going to trade every first-rounder that they have for the next millennium because they're trying and they're in it right now. Like, they'll find – if Aaron Ekblad leaves, and by the way, he had a really – outside of getting his ankles broken a couple of times, he had a really pretty solid series with with Forsling, right? Like, really solid. And
Crazy Ray, his transformation, how it was like drafted as the #1 overall pick, skilled, and then he's now just a beast, like competitive, big, nasty, power play, penalty kill. Like, what a transformation into like a complete leader, and what you want when you draft a defenseman first overall.
Well, and he had to. I think a lot of this stuff in Florida, it all came together at the right time. Like Paul Maurice came there for him, for Paul, at the right time. Ekblad was ready to transform his game, right? Because we all know, like, we get told stuff when we're younger, and we're not quite ready to hear it yet. And then eventually you're like, oh, yeah, that's the right thing. And I think in Florida they got a whole bunch of guys that it was just the right time. Forsling, this is his fourth team. Like, how the hell did Gus Forsling get through 3 other teams, including one on waivers?
Crazy.
It was just the right time for him there. And then they've, in their construction, like everybody, I think this is the most impressive part maybe. Nobody seems to care who scores or who kills a penalty. It's just the guy, whoever it is. They got all those guys, 9 forwards with 15 points, right? Like, it just somebody scores. Somebody blocks a shot. Nico Mikkola turns into a monster. And you're like, well, where did that come from? Nate Schmidt got bought out. He was fantastic for them in the role that they asked him to play. And they're, I think right now they're, to answer it, I think they're about as perfectly constructed as you could be. And they're going to have some challenges, right, to get everybody, or mostly everybody back. But I don't think that we're going to look at them on July 20th and go, ooh, they're way worse than last year. I just don't see it.
What do you think's running through Corey Perry's mind right now?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? Yeah. This is a lot of games to never win. It's like a whole...
Sickening. 5 of the last 6 Cup finals he's been in, he's never won any of them.
At least he's won one, though.
Yes,
you know
he
what
won
I mean?
in 07, so he has a ring. But,
yeah.
Man, this guy could legitimately be Mark Messier. Like, if he won all, he could be one of the all-time, like, Jean Beliveau types. And he's going to have one ring.
That's like, you know, is he the lucky penny or the bad one?
Right.
Like, every like this year, I couldn't believe how good he was. Like, he was fabulous.
Yeah.
And so back to Noodles. You mentioned it earlier about younger, faster. He would be best in a role like where Marchand is playing. Marchand, don't forget, like Brad's not the first-line winger there anymore like he was in Boston. He's not playing 21 minutes a game against the other team's best defenseman. He's in a position to take advantage of the matchups they have in front of him. And Perry, they're asking him to play with McDavid. And that means you've got to score at the rate of a winger that should play with the game's best player. And he's 40. Like, you can't. It's just, right. I think he was unbelievable. I couldn't, if I were rating the Oiler players or whatever, I mean, like, how could you ask any more? But he wasn't in the right place. And some of that's Hyman's injury. But in my mind, they had a lot of people that were never going to score, and they were asking people to do more than they had to do. And eventually the magic dust runs out there.
Well, now we shift to the draft and free agency and possibly all hell breaking loose in the next 2 weeks.
You got 2 weeks of Mitch Marner.
Yes.
You guys will sort that out, I'm sure, in the next 2 weeks.
Or
maybe
more.
Longer.
Or more.
You might do the tour and jump around and look at a bunch of places. And he may not sign for a while. I
did have a thought about, when I read about he might be holding like interviews on the first, second, and third and all that. If that's the way it is and he ends up going somewhere else, is that the last step on the toe of this relationship being fractured? Like, they can't even trade him for a draft pick.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Like, not even going to, don't trade my rights because I'm not, it doesn't matter.
It is, when I read that, I was like, it almost fits around the circus that is. Mm-hmm. And
that
eventually it'll get sorted and he'll go wherever he's going to go. And Yeah, I mean, he's a hell of a player, but man, it just whatever went south or whatever left turn here is going to continue to go that way. If it's pretty clearly not a very pleasant ending.
Doesn't sound that way, which I can understand between Marner and the Leaf fan. I don't really get it between Marner and the team. That's a different story, but ultimately that appears to be where it's going. Great catching up with you, Ray. We'll do it again soon.
Enjoy the summer. I guess we'll talk before long. And Noodles, that was a quick turn, right?
Oh, yeah.
What time was your flight? Like 11 p.m.?
No, we were on the ice still at 1 a.m. last night. So
when I texted you, I had this thought. I thought it would be really funny to get a hold of James's phone once and turn it to Chinese because he's got all his notes on there. And I think that would just be fabulous that he looks down when he knows they're running B-roll and it's something he can't read.
Wouldn't that be wild if you changed the language on the phone?
Wouldn't it be nuts, though, if he knew Chinese and he just...
he just rattled off? That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
No, he turned it on you and asked the questions in Chinese.
Start speaking Mandarin to Noodles.
Yeah.
We did
put it past them.
We did have some technical glitches. I will, as you guys know, live TV, but they did a great job. I don't know if you watch any of the. We had some unbelievable guys come. Like we had Sam Bennett. He was our first guest.
Yeah.
Came right over. Like
They're all
Sam
happy
Bennett,
to do it.
Like Reinhardt, Seth Jones, Bill Zito, Nate Schmidt came over. Like we had some great guests come over. Like I think Rashog, Dregs, everybody with Mike Lane. They were just pulling people. It was pretty cool.
When you're just standing there and you turn around, you're like, oh, hey, hi.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I guess we're on.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Those guys
it's
do
a cool
great
night.
job. They really
you guys
do.
crushed
Yeah,
it like
they do.
always. All right, Ray. Thank you, buddy.
Guys, be well. Great to chat with you.
There he is,
Later.
Ray Ferraro from ESPN. Struddy coming up in 20 minutes. Possibly still looking his wounds. Get a vibe check in Edmonton today. It's crushing, man. It's crushing. Like I couldn't imagine going through that a second time, and you lose again. And so more on that role play coming up. Jays walk it off last night. Back in action tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, we got some pretty massive breaking news here, courtesy of Shams Charania, that the Buss family is entering an agreement to sell the majority ownership of the Lakers to Mark Walter, the CEO and chairman of a holding company, TWG Global. But the Buss family, man, they've owned the Lakers for forever, 50 years or whatever. And,
that'll be massive money.
Oh, I can't wait to see the price tag. Like, it's got to be, what is that? Is that $10 billion for the Lakers?
Yeah.
You said billion, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, he's a billionaire.
$10 billion.
That's what I don't know if it's $10 billion. I haven't seen the number, but would it shock you if the Lakers to buy, although if it's a majority stake, it might be like 60%. It may not be all of it. But
it's going to be a big number. That Buss family, like Jeannie Buss is the visible one there, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
She's going to stay on in some role, I guess.
But as much as you love an organization or whatever, the time is now if you want to like cash out. Like,
for sure, man.
Like
for
what
sure.
did the Redskins, the Commanders, didn't they sell for $7 billion?
Yeah,
the
something like that. Clippers sold for $2 billion. Now that was about a decade ago. So I would think the Lakers, it probably comes with the stadium, I would think. So you've got where the Kings play, you got all where the concerts are. $10 billion might be a stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was $4 or $5 billion, if not more.
Big number. Be a big number.
So we'll track that. We've got Game 6 of the NBA Finals tomorrow night. Jay's back in action tonight. Struddy coming up. Role play, level of concern. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and up on YouTube Live.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
I'm not sure this is appropriate or necessary. I mean, it's a greasy play to play this song.
Ever since Duthie was on the toilet for Trade Center and he was singing this, I've hated this. Not because of Duthie. I hate this song.
Well, it's so associated with the Oilers winning, right? Like whenever they win, this is the big song out in Edmonton. Struddy does his little dance. And I thought it was, again, just a dagger, man. I guess in the Panthers room last night while they were celebrating, they were playing this.
Man, they don't hold back. I kind of respect it where it's like, yeah.
Like it's crazy.
Pink Pony Club, and
yeah.
These guys were at the bar at 10 in the morning, and the Oilers suck chants. Like it was just like they didn't just like when they get you down, they want to kick you in the junk.
I'll tell you what, though, man. I've waited an hour to do this, but I'm so sick of Florida because, like, Jerry got 100% cheers last night, which is so pathetic. And I was watching. We don't have to get into it, but I was looking at the ratings.
Yeah, do you see that? 3.2?
Horrendous. Nobody watching. Literally nobody cares.
People were watching lacrosse. Like
nobody was watching.
Was getting better ratings.
These guys are in the Cup final, and nobody's watching down there. And they're at the elbow room. There's like 12 people kicking around. It's a nuisance. They're bothering people in Fort Lauderdale because, you know, they've won, and people are like, who are you? Sorry, what's happening here? It's just such a shame that. And it's such a loser thing to say. I know I sound like a loser. I know I do. I have self-awareness here. But, like, Edmonton is the epitome of a hockey town. It's a Canadian town. And, like, the idea that Florida's won it twice and Tampa won it twice and Vegas has won it. And you know what's coming? Atlanta's coming and Houston's probably coming. And there's going to be more Southern teams.
Oh, yeah.
And
Gotta have them. Gotta have them.
And it sucks. It sucks that Florida, like, no one is going to appreciate what the Panthers have done because it's not the Dolphins, it's not the Heat, it's not college football. And that's not the Panthers' fault. It's not the players' fault, all that kind of stuff. But it's a reality. It's, you know, back-to-back cups at Dynasty, and there's no one watching.
Well,
no one's paying attention.
I'll be honest, the vibe was like – I felt the vibe yesterday in Florida. But I was shocked to see what you saw, too, those ratings. Like, that's outrageous. Like, that said, what, like 96% of the state didn't watch the game. Right? Is that the,
and that was specific. What I saw, TNT specifically in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, like southeast Florida. Like, that's where the Florida Panthers market. Basically like 97% of televisions were not watching the game.
Which is weird.
There's just no one watching.
Yeah, dude, it's like a side sport. It's not like football where everyone will be tuned in saying the game's on tonight. It's like a side sport.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's TFC's won back-to-back. Like
it's Frisbee golf. It's basically Frisbee golf.
Kind of what it is.
On skates.
There's fans, and there's the 50,000 people that love it, and then a couple other people that obviously like, I'll get in on this. This is amazing and cool, and I got a ticket, and I'll go. But like Bettman's saying, you know, this is proof that it works in the sunshine. No, actually, it's the complete opposite. That you have a team this good, and no one's watching, and they're partying through the streets of Fort Lauderdale, and
well, you got to get like the building's always full with a good team.
I mean, in the cup in the finals and through the playoffs and stuff.
You just couldn't stop yourself by taking that shot. Like,
it's not about the team. It's not. And I make that point clear. It's
say
not the players.
Say it so we have the clip. Nobody cares what anybody in Florida thinks.
You actually
say it.
You prefaced it saying, I sound like a loser saying.
I understand. Is exactly what it sounds like. Loser, loudmouth Canadian hockey guy saying, why can't it be us? I know that's what I sound like, and that's what I'm saying. And listen, let me be clear. If that's in Boston, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Minnesota, that's not the same, right? It would be 50% of households would be watching, and the streets would be – if they were at a local bar and – if they're at the Anchor Bar in Buffalo doing that at 10, the place would be there'd be 10,000 people outside.
You're right.
It's just,
right.
It's the reality of the sport and its roots there and where it stands in the pecking order.
I also think it's the reality of the demographic there. You know, there's just so much to do. You guys have been, you go to Florida, Hayes, all the time. Used to live there. Like, it just, it's on. Like I say, I'm at the hotel yesterday. It was everywhere. And I went to 7-Eleven. The person at 7-Eleven was wearing a Panthers jersey and stuff. Like, there was a buzz, but it's not. Like, it's not the same. Because I was in Edmonton 4 days earlier, and you can't go anywhere without, Oilers and all that. Canadian cities. I was in Ottawa. I was in Toronto, like during that Battle of Ontario. Like that, you feel the buzz, right? You feel the energy. You just don't in certain situations. In Florida, you're right. The building was packed. Their attendance, they've got a real loyal fan base, but it's not as big. That's just the difference. They're very far down in the pecking order as far as level of importance in that state.
And that's the nature of things.
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. And that applies with some basketball teams, some baseball teams. You know, it's different everywhere you go. But, it's just going to get bigger and bigger, again, as they expand. Like, they're not expanding to Quebec City. They're not putting another team in Toronto or going to Saskatchewan or something like that. It's going to be southern teams, probably in, good weather, good state tax setups, and that's what's coming. That's what's going to continue. And it felt like the Canadian Cup drought surely was going to come to an end at some point in the last 2 years, but it didn't. And now I don't know when it's going to stop. Like, this run could be a long, long run, because I don't feel like the Oilers. I don't see how they get back to a Cup final next year. That seems very difficult to envision at this point.
Why does it seem so much more difficult than the winning side? It's like, I feel confident Florida will get back, but the team that lost twice in the finals, I'm not even as confident as.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's head out to the scene of the crime. Here's Jason Strudwick joining us.
It's press conference season. Don't forget that.
Press conference season in Edmonton, Struddy. When does the first one fire up? Welcome to the party.
Later, a little bit later this year. Yeah, I think the guys will have it on. I think it's tomorrow. They have their exit availability. So, yeah, the media will be there, front and center. Yeah, you know what? It's tough. Last year it felt like they were a shot away from winning the Stanley Cup. This year it didn't feel like that at all. Like, they won 2 games, but Florida, they got to a level I didn't think was possible. They were so good, so dominant, and they just played their game, played their system, didn't change their lines, and they just forced you to make a mistake. Look at the first goal. Ekholm's a good passer. He throws a puzzle over to Bouchard, boom, it's in his net, right? Like, that's a play he doesn't make, but you just Florida's kept doing the same thing every shift. They were literally relentless, and the Oilers weren't able to figure it out.
Struddy, what do you think they take from it? I mean, Carolina, Tampa, Toronto, everyone kind of had to walk away. And you played in the big leagues. You know that not everything is like, let's take the positives from this. Other than looking at the Florida Panthers and saying they were way better than us, what are the Edmonton Oilers walking away from this taking from it?
So they're a good team. I mean, I think that's clearly makes the final twice. And they had their way with Vegas and Dallas, really. And those are, 2 teams that many people had projected to get to the final. So I think they've realized that they have to be a better team and get deeper on that group. Florida, in many ways, had 3 first-liners. You think about the lead scorer of the playoff was on the second line, and then the guy who scored the most goals in the final was on the third line. The Oilers didn't have that, and most teams don't. Their D is deep, elite goaltending. So the Oilers they're a really good team, but they're not as good as Florida. And that's what it looks like when you just dominate in the Stanley Cup Finals, what Florida did. So, and this isn't so much on the players, although they can all improve. You give it the same Charlie effort to do it. But I think that the team now, how do you get to another level, right? How do you add more pieces to this puzzle? Because some guys, they're not going to be back. It's always changed. But how do you get better? And my priority number 1 for this group, number 1 more than the goalie, another D-man, anything, is finding someone who can play with Leon. Putting Connor and Leon together, I don't think it works. I want to find a winger for Leon. They tried it last year with Skinner and Arvidsson, didn't work. I'm searching high and low for someone who's going to be him, be with him, and that way you have two separate lines that are both good, that can roll out there and play against the likes of what we saw this past 10 days with Florida.
So Struddy, this is, I wouldn't call it a lazy narrative. I think it's a front and center topic that is throughout the league, and I know it's a topic in Edmonton, but what are the chances that they come back with the same goalie tandem?
The goalies didn't lose them this series, but they also didn't win them this series. And, I think that there was times they could have been better, like the first goal yesterday. I'd like to see that save on Reinhart on that first goal. I talked about Ekholm making that pass. So they got to figure out what they want to do. Do you go out and get another number one and then Skinner's out, or do you find a 1B situation, and that means Pickard's out? But I don't think they're both back. The challenge for the Oilers is that they have such a good deal on their goalies. It's $3.2 million. And so they have, compared to Florida, they have, $7-8 million they can spend on players to make their lineup deeper or stronger. So the problem is, Noodles, more than that. Who is the guy? Like, who is the goalie? Is it the guy in St. Louis? Is it Gibson in Anaheim? You're just like, I could see that. Then what's the cost to get that? If you pay that price, are you able to bolster the rest of your lineup?
You're right. I just think, we talk about it ad nauseum in Toronto all the time, running it back. And, hey, something to me, there has to be a different look, even if it's a lateral move. I made a short list here, guys, and we can all get into it. But guys like Merzlikins, you mentioned John Gibson, you mentioned Binnington. Vancouver's got 3 goaltenders. Demko, Lankinen, and Sheloff is going to need waivers next year. Tristan Jarry's probably available. Philip Grubauer in Seattle. And here's the other one. And this is going to be an ugly comment, but Carter Hart might be available to play, right? Depending on what happens with his situation, a lot more serious situation. But I'm looking at it, yes, a lot of those guys outside of Binnington, maybe Demko, those, everybody else is kind of a lateral move. But they're different. That's my point, is sometimes you do need different to advance because, as Connor said, banging your head up against the wall with the same thing, it doesn't work. So to me, you do need change in all facets to see if you can inch forward. Well,
and yet they're in the Cup final back-to-back years. That's the amazing thing. It's,
you're right.
Inching forward, 1 win last year and 2 this year. With Jason Strudwick, where does McDavid come into play in terms of how people are feeling about what I guess went wrong in the Cup final? How much of it is on his plate in Edmonton?
Well, he didn't do what we maybe expect. And I think at times, we have high expectations for a Connor or a Leon or, like a Superman to come and just save everything. Well, Florida doesn't care, and I think the Oilers actually played into the hand of Florida by putting Connor and Leon together, because guess who's out against them? 2 of the best defensive players in the world, as well as offensive, in Reinhart and Barkov. So I didn't like that. And so that's why I go back to my idea. They got to get a player to play with Leon and someone that can, really a true legit left or right winger. You pick it. But I think for McDavid, I think he's frustrated because, they're so close, but this was so far. Like Florida to me was the best team in the playoffs for sure. Wasn't even close. And so they were second, but they're a long ways from first, just like everybody else was. So Connor will have reflection. He'll go and work on what he needs to and all that. But I really think this is about the team sorting out what they need to do to have a more balanced set of lines that are consistent. The changing of the lines all the time, it means you're not sure what your line should look like. Florida didn't change their line once. I think maybe it was Greer coming in and out just because of an injury. D stayed the same, goalie stayed the same. And there's something to be said for having the same line mates, more consistently than we saw here from Edmonton.
Well, it is going to be a fascinating couple of weeks in Edmonton. And, like Draisaitl's deal kicks in next year, so that's $14 million. Bouchard is an RFA. He's going to get paid possibly, $10 million? I don't know, $11 million? That's another, kind of part of this is that let's assume McDavid stays and signs. That'll kick in the year after next. But he's not playing for less than Draisaitl. So they're getting close, even with the cap going up, to having a big three where they're all going to make a lot of money. They might be spending $40 million on 3 players a year from now. And that's another thing that rang true here. Again, a team with no one's made more than $10.5 million on a cup-winning team at any point in the cap era. Barkov makes 10, Bob makes 10. I think Eichel made 10 on Vegas. No one makes more than that. And, the Leafs, we've been talking about it for years, Struddy, that all these guys make all this money. We keep talking, all I've heard all day, and I agree with it, depth, got to find help. Well, how are you going to do that when these guys are going to make a fortune for the next 7 or 8 years?
Dude, you're going garbage picking like you did with Skinner and Arvidsson.
Like, it's not, I don't see how it can change. Like, how can you find guys?
Well, the other part of that is that, 2 of their good young players are playing for the St. Louis Blues now.
Yeah.
So, you look at, and I don't know the order of who was at fault or whatever, but, how would Dylan Holloway have looked as the player I talked about playing beside Leon Draisaitl for 82 games? He was under $3 million, I believe. I believe he was under 3. And, yeah, he's going to get bumped up for sure. But Skinner was $3 million. So he could have had him. So, that would have made a big difference I think, in a healthy Hyman. Was that be enough? I don't know, but I would have liked to find out if I was an other player, right? Because you're looking, you always think, hey, who's leaving, who's coming? So it will be a challenge. Now, when they get these players locked in, that money's there, and the cap will hopefully continue to go up. The problem is the cap's going up, but so is their age. These guys aren't over the hill, but, it's 8 years from now, the cap, let's say it's $140 million. Well, those guys are going to be 35, 36, whatever, 37. So, there is some urgency to try to build this team around them. But that's Stan Bowman. This is his first 2 offseasons. I like the acquisition of Wallman. Sounds like Trent Frederic's going to sign. I don't think he was at his best here, obviously. But let's see what that looks like after the summer and where these numbers land.
Well, quickly, because you mentioned Frederic, Andy Strickland's reporting it's going to be an 8-year deal, possibly, for
Trent Frederic?
Yeah, that's what he's saying. An 8-year deal worth about $4 million a year. Does that sound right to you, Strud? That seems excessive for Frederic.
Yeah, it's getting into Pierre Engvall territory. I know that Noodles is a huge fan.
Yeah.
I remember when that deal came across to Pierre Engvall. I was literally, I had to double check that maybe there was 2 Pierre Engvalls in Canada.
Not more. We thought there was 4 because we all went nuts.
Yeah. Pierre Engvall from Rimouski, Quebec, not the guy from Sweden.
Yeah. He must have been, or someone changed their name. Did Nathan McKinnon change his name?
Right.
But, so, listen, I've talked to guys in Boston. They really like him. They think he's an effective player. And he could do a lot of things, but it feels like they're trying to do like the Nick Paul, right? Sign him to a long time, and develop. But what I'm really interested, guys, is I want to see him play center. I really do. I want to have him have a chance to play center. The challenge is there's quite a few centers, including Adam Henrique, who's 35, 1 more year left on his deal. Does Henrique move shift to the wing? And then maybe you have Frederic at center, and then on the third line, and then you have the young guy, Matt Savoy, on the other side. Like, they've got to get some youth into this lineup and let them play. Let Savoy play, this young player they got from Buffalo. But those are big numbers, but I don't know. I'd love to see a big center, kind of like a Adam Lowry light, if you will.
Yeah, I think you're right. What they did with him is, and you'll see a lot of managers do it, is you stretch the term out to keep the AAV down if a guy who's going to play in your top 9 type of thing. It just, I think nowadays, and rightfully so, when you see term on guys that aren't your inner core, you know that contract at some point isn't going to match what the player's worth, and you're going to move away. And we've seen it here in Toronto. Like Tanev, we love. I mean, Chris Tanev's a rock star, but I think Tree, rightfully so, to get him, gave him extra term to keep the number down because he had to fit him into the structure. Frederic, 8 years. And why would he want to, though? Like, why would Trent Frederic want to sign other than the security? If somebody's handing you $30 million, you're not going to say no.
It's a big commitment, and Draisaitl's here for at least 8. Like maybe McDavid's here for 8. You're like, hey, I'm going to pair up with these guys. Not a bad play.
Yeah.
I can't reason it may not be the case, but that's what's being reported. I cannot reason an 8-year contract for Trent Frederic. I mean, he's on your third line.
That's
what
the
he
Brandon
is, the third line
Tanev.
player.
It's Brandon Tanev. You're right. It's the Nick Paul. It's the guys like, who just signed
Yanni
Gord. Yeah,
but he got it down to like under 3, I think. Like that's another thing. If it's $4 million a year, is that a big discount that you're getting for that kind of term? If it plays out that way, I don't know. But money's going to get splashed around. Like Bouchard's going to get paid.
What do you think that number's going to be? Is he going to say, don't even think of me showing up for less than 10?
Well, last time I was on, you guys, we talked a little bit about, is he one of the best defensemen in the league? And I think
he's in the hot.
Shown the playoffs. He has been. Yeah, he's in the mix. So, in the mix means, what does that mean? Minimum 10?
Yeah, it's minimum 10. If Darnell Nurse is making $9.25, it's minimum 10. That's another problem they have. Nurse is a barometer, and he's making $9.25. And Bouchard's going to look at that, I would presume, and say, well, we'll start there plus $1.5 million, and now we can start negotiating.
Yeah, we can go up after year one.
Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah, you're probably – I mean, the challenge, too, for the Oilers is I think it's Ekholm, Kulak, and I want to say Wallman, or maybe it's one more year. They're all up after next year.
1 year.
So
1 year away.
They're not getting – those guys aren't getting younger. And I'm not saying they're old, but who's the next group coming in? Is it Emberson and Stetcher? I think we know what Stetcher is. I think Emberson is probably a bottom pairing guy. There's nothing wrong with that. But I know you're trying to win now, but if you have Connor Leon for 8 more, 9 more years, there's got to be someone from the play with, right? You got to try to keep filling that backfilling. They don't have draft picks, so they've gone to Europe. They've gone to the colleges, trying to find players that they can hopefully grow and develop, or middle age to jump in. So, I think Stan Bowen's got a lot on his plate here. The here and now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I know no one wants to hear that when you have Connor Leon, but you got to keep adding pieces to this group on the low, on the cheap.
Struddy, what was wrong with Ekholm the last 3 games? I know he was injured, but it looked like he had a knee replacement the day before the finals.
I mean, when you hear about how bad the injury was, it sounded like it was a groin that was really, really torn badly. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but whatever. It was a bad injury. And he probably came back sooner than he should have. And then, you're limited. And when you can't trust your stride, it's a scary feeling. I was like, I didn't have a lot of groin problems, but I didn't take very many hard strides, so it didn't really matter. But I know shoulders and backs, I had those issues. And it's scary when you're not sure, when you have shoulder sore and you're not sure if it's going to hold up and you go and hit someone. That's a scary feeling. So translate that now to a push where you're not sure if you have 100% push or maybe your stride shorter. He was off. He was off for sure. And then they're trying to, get people going, not to mention the pressure that Florida put on. I think coaches around the NHL need to study what Florida did. Paul Maurice, give him credit. He had that team so dialed in. The D-man, they skated so hard to get up the ice that if the Oilers try to go up to the wing, the D-men were up there and pinching on those wingers right away. I mean, it was insane how fast they were getting up there. And they're not exactly the fleetest of foot, the D-man, but they worked hard to get up there. So, Coaching Clinic 101 by Paul Maurice. 2 claps and a woo for him.
No kidding. Yeah, it was clinical, man. It's been clinical for the last couple of years in Florida. We'll see where it goes from here.
Struddy, you got to tell us quickly before you leave about subbing in for the autograph session, how much people hated your guts.
Well, people are trying to be nice, but I got the call hey, and I was supposed to meet Noodles. I get the call hey, a player can't make it for the autograph session. Can you do it? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Who is it for? They're like, Chris Pronger. I'm like, oh my God, the fans are going to hate me. They're literally going to hate me. So then I don't know if you guys saw the tweet they put up about it, and the chirps, people said we can meet Strudwick at Safeway. So
Strudwick at Safeway.
Yeah, we can see Strudwick at Safeway. Or my favorite was, this is the worst thing Pronger's ever done to this franchise. So it was so bad. And I wheel in there, and I can see right away. People are they can see me walking up in their faces. They're like, Oh my God! Look at
No,
this
but was
loser.
there any dad and a son or something that like didn't know Pronger wasn't there, and then they just like appeared right at the beginning of the line, and the dad was like, "Here, son, here's Chris Pronger," and they were like, "Come on, man."
No, this 3 young guys, like 20 years old, wheel up. They're like, "Chris, it's so great to meet you." I'm like, "Actually, I'm Jason." Like, what? They're like, didn't even pretend to hide it. I'm like, "Do you want a card autographed?"
Oh, it's so good.
It was so humbling, guys. And I have a fairly thick skin, but that was so brutal. Chris Pronger. Why do I have to fill in for like Laddie Smead or someone like that? But one of the greatest defensemen of his generation, I got to fill his shoes? No thanks.
Yeah. Maybe as an opener or something.
Yeah.
You know, like Struddy's coming out first and Prongs will be out later.
I'm a fluffer.
Yeah, exactly. Get the crowd worked up.
I had to laugh. I was telling the guys yesterday, you text me and said there was some disappointed people, and I could even, like, read the disappointment in the text. There was context in the text. Like, I was laughing so hard.
The worst part is my sister came with her. We got tickets. We're going to the game. We're both excited. I get the call. I didn't really know until I got there. And she's like, "Who are you subbing for?" I'm like, "Chris Pronger." She's like, "Ooh." I'm like, "Do you want to come with me?" She's like, "No, I'm going to get a drink." She left me. She didn't want to watch the people's reaction, right? Like, well, that's not good.
Honestly, like outside of Gretzky or Messier or something, it really couldn't be worse than
That's the worst.
It couldn't be.
Chris
it's like Paul
Pronger.
Coffey.
Yeah.
You know, anybody, like, and I know where I rank. Like, I don't think I'm better than Pronger or Coffey, but just give me a fighting chance. Even give me someone else. Like, together, maybe me and, like, Laddie Smead go together.
Yeah. Right.
Me and whoever, like, anyone, just to soften the blow. No, they just send me out there with a blindfold and a dart. And I'm just taking punches.
Well, you're a good man, Struddy, and you love the Oilers and you love Edmonton, and that's what's important, right? You performed your civic duty, and I think you should be commended for that.
He didn't love me at that moment.
Yeah.
He didn't love me then. Yeah, he did. He does owe me one. He
owes you one, big time. Big time. Yeah. All right, Strud, thanks for doing this, buddy. Appreciate it.
Well, we'll talk to you guys after the pressers.
Yes, presser season officially on in Edmonton. Thanks, Struddy. There's Jason Strudwick joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Yeah, I love his sisters. Like, I'm out of here, man. I don't want to witness that. It's Delhomme. Like, that's basically Plumber to Delhomme. It's Struddy to Pronger.
Exactly. I think of the 8 to 10-year-old kid who Pronger was their favorite player. And
you see him, Pronger's doing ESPN. He's doing Hockey Night. He's everywhere now, too. Yeah. So it's like, man, I want to talk to him about the current game and the media landscape and what he plans on doing with his future. And, there's a lot of different things that come with a meet and greet with Chris Pronger. But Struddy's, he's a beauty. Struddy stepped up. All right, role play level of concern coming up. We've got our picks for the Travelers as well. We got to get to that. You see, Rory's excited. He's so happy to be in Hartford, Connecticut. He can't wait to get things started at the Travelers. So we'll get to our picks a little bit later on. Steve Phillips in an hour on the Jays with a walk-off last night. Barger's been great. Bichette was great. Vladdy was great. Jays are rolling, so we'll catch up with Steve. And Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider, for the first official primer of the offseason. What do we have in store the next couple of weeks? OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
You can never, ever ask me to stop drinking. Do you understand?
I do. I really do.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
All right, role play level of concern.
God, that guy was a booze bag in that movie. Like,
Oh, yeah. He had a very...
I've never seen anything like that.
He really got after it. And Nick Cage is, of course, the most extreme level of concern, right?
Yep.
Pine on the patio is no concern whatsoever, and then we've got everything in between. O-Dog, you're playing the role of Stan Bowman, the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. What is your level of concern that McDavid will not sign an extension this summer?
I'm not going to lie. I would be Stevie Caldwell.
A couple of whiskeys and 5 or 6 beers.
Because just of the unknown that possibly you go to him and he says, because with this type of player, it's kind of been an automatic scenario where it's like July 1st, it's long term, it's locked up, and it's done in short order. But I don't know if it's the concern of because you would think he's going to stay with his best buddy. They made a deal that they were going to stay there for a long time. But just the idea itself would be horrifying of going up to him and saying, you ready to get this locked up and done? Or contact with the agent and he says, we're going to wait this out. And then you kind of get no matter what happens, if it's not done July 1st, there will be John Tavares type vibes when he left the island, where it's like, yeah, he for a long time, he was like, this is between my agent and, they're going to work this out. It's business. And then all of a sudden he had his pajamas on.
Well, I mean, I don't think July 1st is reasonable, but before the start of next season, you'd want some sort of an indication. Now, it's not going to matter. They're not trading McDavid or anything like that.
Yeah, but, dude, it's McDavid. Like, they want this deal done yesterday.
Of course you want to and you're hoping to.
Right.
But, he can do whatever he wants. And I'm curious, we've discussed the NBA and the way that they work and operate and whether or not that's going to come to the National Hockey League. And I don't know what kind of power McDavid can really wield here in terms of roster construction. I'm not sure if you can pull LeBron and, hold their feet to the fire and say, I'm not signing until you do this or that or the other. I'm not sure that's how he's wired. But if anyone was going to be capable of doing it, it would be him. If he's like, in other words, I need 2 new goalies here. They'll go find 2 new goalies. I need this, I need that.
But I think he already had. Don't you think? His agent is the president.
Not anymore. He's not.
Coach.
He was, but Jackson isn't anymore. Clearly,
I know. But my point is they've done a lot for Connor. I do believe they go to make a move. Like any top player, I'm sure the manager would talk to your leadership group and go, hey, we're looking at this, we're looking at that, especially if they're going to bring in players that they believe could mesh with them.
Jamie, in this day and age, if I was making transactions and I had elite players, like if I was Billy Zito, I would have Reinhart, Barkov, Bobrovsky, Ekblad, Jones. I would have them in on all the meetings. Screw it.
Well,
you might as well have the players familiar with what the hell's going on.
I think, it just depends on what type of move you're making. That's the biggest thing. But I think I would be Rick Bushwood, not worry. I think they're going to get it done. It's more about, does he last the contract? Because I think he's going to sign. But, are you going to finish 8 years there? Because I don't think he's going to jam that organization up and go, I'm waiting to become an unrestricted free agent. I think he signs for $18 million a year or whatever the number's going to be. But the biggest thing is if he, at some point, are you going to finish your career there? I still think that would be more I would be concerned about.
And he's given them 10 years. He's been there for 10 years now. And if he gives them another 4 or 5, it's an unbelievable commitment and run. And maybe he signs a short-term deal. And this will never happen because, again, it's not the same. But I referenced LeBron powering, using his power in the NBA. What if he thinks I got to pull a Kevin Durant? I got to go somewhere and win. I got to just go to Florida. I got to find a way to get to Tampa on a 1 or 2 year deal. That would be crazy.
Start chasing it though, then you know how that works.
I know. Then you're a step behind, right?
Hockey's a lot different than basketball.
I understand. I understand. But Durant was like, I got to get one. I'm going over here, and I'm going to get 2, and he got 2, and he left.
Yeah, I'm going to the team that just beat me. That's what he did.
Wouldn't that be insane if McDavid's like, I'm going to Florida next year for a year, and I'm going to win a cup, and I'm out of here.
Do you think they would trade for him? That's
I don't know. I don't even know if they would. It's a great question.
Gino Reda would be in a bikini down in Florida for that, waiting outside of somewhere.
Do you think Bill Zito would put a package together to acquire Connor McDavid?
But it would obviously weaken your team because you'd have to put so much on the table.
Why would he want any package for any player? They were like,
that's what
everybody that talks or assesses what they were doing, Brian, they say that I've heard former NHL players say, Struddy just said it, I cannot believe how good they are, or played, or did this, or did that.
Yep.
Who the hell's going to stop them next year, man?
I guess that's what I'm saying is, and I get every sport is different, and it's a hard salary cap. But is there a team in the NFL that if Patrick Mahomes was available, they wouldn't say take anything you want? Yeah. Because we want Mahomes? Is there, if you could get Jokic or Shea or whatever, I think everyone in the NBA would be like, what is it? You tell me. You can have anything you want. Yet I think 20 teams in the NHL would give anything to get McDavid. Maybe more, maybe 25, more. Maybe 30.
It's probably 30.
Maybe it's only Florida would say, no, not interested because we don't need him. And he would throw everything out of whack, and it would be out of balance.
Yeah, they would certainly be weakened because it would probably start with something crazy like Barkov and not Ryan. Barkov and Reinhard would be too much, but you know what I'm talking about. It'd be Barkov and somebody else,
or Hagee maybe, or something like that, or yeah. I mean,
Barkov and Jones.
What's the deal that would make Edmonton say yes?
I don't think there is one. I'm sorry. Keep in mind, we're talking.
Yeah, for McDavid.
No,
in Florida. I'm talking the Panthers in particular.
This team's gone to 2 cup finals in the.
I know, and they've lost to the team we're talking about.
I know,
here.
But we're not you still have to give them the respect that they got there.
Okay, but we're speaking hypothetically, Noodles. I'm just asking. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's going to happen. No one's going to hold you to it.
Yeah,
what's the deal that Edmonton would say yes to? If Bill Zito called and said, we want McDavid, you tell me what it's going to take off our team to get him. What would they ask for if McDavid's going the other way?
Barkov, Jones, and
Bobrovsky.
That's too much. I mean,
that's how idiotic this conversation is.
Yeah, I love the way you dream this up and then you yell at us for
yelling. It's just you gotta. It's a two-way street. I mean, Florida is a great team, and Florida, it's a hypothetical, but I think that's too much. I mean, I think
it obviously is too much because they're not going to do it. And the thing is I don't want Doogie. I don't want Doogie going trade these guys, and it's a headline, and we get radio. We radio ourselves.
It's not going to be. Who cares? It would go viral.
I can see the TSN Twitter account. Boys are discussing a McDavid trade to Florida.
Exactly. McDavid could be the next Durant. Maybe he's Kevin Durant, although Durant signed as a free agent.
Yeah,
so.
I think if we're talking that silly, that's how silly the trade would look like. It would have to be a goalie, defenseman, and a forward, and it'd be their 3 best ones. So that's because
I
you would have to.
I don't think it would be that much, but it's not going to happen. I get it, but McDavid, you got to again. The elephant in the room with McDavid is that he's not a kid anymore. He's been in the league for 10 years, and I talked about it last year, and you guys jumped on me and all that. I'm not sure he wins the Hart again. I don't know if he wins. Just the history of the league is you do a lot of that damage your first 10 years in the league. That's kind of what happens. And he's probably going to play in the league for 20 years. I think he'll probably be the best player in the game for another 5 or 6, 7 maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's 35, 36 and still doing it. But the window's closing on his prime. He's not a young kid anymore.
No, I mean, when you're 28 and you've been in the league for a long time and you're still chasing it, but that's unfortunately, McKinnon, all of these guys have done it. Matthews, they're all trying to do it. It's rare. We were talking about it last night on the way home. Like a guy like Matthew Tkachuk's won back-to-back Stanley Cups. This guy, for the rest of his career, if he wanted to, he won't. He's a competitive guy. Could put his feet up and go. Like there was Hall of Fame. There was Hall of Famers made last night. Don't you think?
That's a great question. How many were made last night?
Last night.
Like Barkov's in if he just keeps playing another 7 or 8 years. I think Reinhart might have put himself in. Possibly. Right. It's like I don't know if Reinhardt's in yet. He's probably not.
Reinhart needs to string together a bunch
Bob's
more
in
years.
for sure.
Yeah, he is. Here's a crazy thing. We've been talking now for an hour and 43 minutes. Sam Reinhart had 4 goals last night.
Yeah.
4
blended.
Like we were, guys.
And we talked about that yesterday. We were saying it's going to be one of their nights. Like one guy's going to step up, and it was his night.
I read the headline saying, "Is it McDavid? McDavid needs a night." Sam Reinhart puts 4 and 2 beauties, and then 2 empty netters. Fine, doesn't matter, but like ridiculous. And the beauty of it is he knew exactly what he was doing on that goal on the back door. Gets inside position on Darnell Nurse and directs it in because his stick is being lifted. Like it was a beautiful play by Barkov to Reinhart, an awful play by Stuart Skinner to just lay that rebound there. But the first goal was one of the best goals you can imagine in a game-clinching Stanley Cup winning goal.
Like you talk legacy, man. 4 goals in a cup clinching game, and he scored the game winner last year in Game 7.
Yeah,
like 2-1. That's all Reinhart does, man. All right, we got more role plays here. We got into hypothetical trades and Hall of Fame debates. And all right, Noodles, you're playing the role of Stuart Skinner. What is your level of concern you will not be a starter in the NHL next season?
I'm Rick Bushwood plus Stevie
6
Caldwell.
Busch Light, 6 Bud Light, and I love them, tall boys.
The 2 of them never heard of the combo.
5 or 6 beers.
Oh, that's
because
impressive.
I think Cage is above that. So it's just below Cage, but in between Bushwood and Cage.
Okay.
So that's why I put Stevie Caldwell in there.
Confused.
What it is it's a massive night, but it's not quite Nick Cage. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, which is wild because last year he started all those games. This year he started a lot. This year, just his numbers. He did not have a good season. He didn't. His numbers were not good. And
where this will change is if he ends up getting traded. If he gets traded to an organization that I brought up names, and I'm just hypothetical. If they trade him to Columbus for Elvis Merzlikins, okay, he'll be the starter in Columbus. With Tarasov, the 2 of them will play. Like that's the thing. If he goes to another organization, it'll be different. Just if Edmonton wants to change the look in net, that's my point. So he could be. It just if you're specifically talking about the Edmonton Oilers, I think they do have a different look next year, whether that's Skinner, Pickard, or a combination of both of them.
Yeah,
guys. People are talking about goaltending at Edmonton, and they're like, they're going to have Skinner, and the value of it, it's like 2.5 or whatever the number is. But it's like, it would scare the hell out of me if he lit up the regular season, and then all of a sudden you went to him again, and it's like, oh yeah, just like this year, it's like, yeah, he's our guy again. He's the guy that's going to do it. And then you had those episodes in the playoffs, like that whole idea would scare the living hell out of me.
Yeah. It's the new Leafs. Are they different this year?
That's what I brought up earlier. Is you can't, as McDavid said, kept banging your head against the wall. You've got to find a way to break through. Now, some of the moves they make in the offseason, it might take a step back because the team isn't as good or the team isn't as. But you have to take that chance, don't you, to be aggressive and go, what we've got to the Stanley Cup final, but we haven't broken through, and that's the difference. And to me, that's where it starts, and then you build out from there.
Yeah, it's a conundrum in Edmonton because you've got a great team with great players. Again, you've been in the Cup final 2 years in a row. Like, that just never happens. Who loses 2 years in a row in the Cup final?
Yeah.
Nobody. And you ran into the same team, and they're a juggernaut. And honestly, if you played any other team, maybe you got 1 or 2 rings the last 2 years. Like, really, you might. Yet, again, you compare it, and every situation is different, clearly. But I look at Sid, I look at the Penguins, different timeline with where they're at and all that kind of stuff, and the cap and everything. But they went to back-to-back in 08-09, and then they waited 7 years till they got back. I don't think you have 7 years with Draisaitl and McDavid where they are in their careers. You know, they're not sitting there till they're 34 to get back. But what if it is a reset of a couple years? It might be. It might be a 2 or 3 year reset. That it's not intentional. It's not your plan. But it takes you a little while. You got to get a couple of kids through the system. You got to win a couple of trades.
I don't know McDavid the mode that he's in. He doesn't have a couple years.
Well, I'm not saying that's how they're going to go to him and say you got to give me 2 years. They're going to keep trying every year.
No,
I'm just saying when the dust settles, we're 2 or 3 years down the road before they're actually back in the hunt or back in a cup final.
And it could be injuries. We don't know. Like, you know, like the list of injuries is going to come out. I think RNH had a broken hand, all of that. Like, you could have this amazing team and everything's going good, and then all of a sudden, you know, Zach Hyman was flying for Edmonton, breaks his wrist or whatever it was.
See you later.
Done. Like, that's you, these are opportunities that are missed. So, you know, you can say coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Doesn't matter.
End,
you didn't win.
Didn't get it done, and
you have to
me, you have to have a different look next year on at least some of them.
Dregs in 15 minutes. Steve Phillips on the Jays walking off the D-backs last night. What else is going on in baseball? Game 6 of the NBA Finals tomorrow night. Best bet still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, Dreg's coming up. We got our picks for the Travelers as well. Is anyone going to take Rory McIlroy? That is the question. Will anyone have the courage to take Rory McIlroy?
I'm quite comfortable. We already made an agreement. If there's a chance you get Scotty, it's your guy. Rory is my guy.
So you want to just establish that right now? I take Scheffler and you get Rory right out of the gate?
I will go this far. Whenever we're doing these picks and he's available, you get Scotty, I get Rory. I'll take that trade-off every day.
All day. Happy to do
all
that.
day for me.
No, not all day for you. All day for me. Okay, so there you go. First picks have been established. So we'll get to that. Steve Phillips coming up. we got video. I don't know where Trump was today, but there is a video we will play in the next hour that is I have such a great appreciation for. As a guy who likes to nap from time to time, there is, you talk about the Scheffler of napping. Tiger in 2000. There is a guy who put on a napping clinic in front of Trump. We'll play it. We'll have a full breakdown. I must have watched that 5 times in 5 minutes, and I can't stop. I have a mental image of this guy. We'll play it. We'll get into it in the next hour. Couldn't care less about his surroundings. All right, so that's coming up. And Dregs and Steve Phillips on our best bets. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Hour 3 Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. As always, every show up on YouTube Live on the TSN YouTube channel. You can find us podcasted wherever you find your podcast, the iHeartRadio app. We're up on TSN2, TSN Radio here in Toronto. Darren Dreger in a few moments. The first official off-season primer with Dregs now that the cup has been handed out. We'll get to that with Dregs. Steve Phillips on the Jays. There's a lot of good mojo with the Jays right now. Back in action tonight. Best bet still to come. So I guess Trump was back at the White House, which makes this so much better.
Flagpoles. That's what it was.
So this clip is from the White House. I thought this guy was in like Iowa somewhere where the federal government in the U.S. had been, donating money, and some guy's like, hey, thanks, good to see you. There was a clip you sent to me, Noodles, where Trump is sitting there chatting with guys, and guys are coming up. The guy running the crane up top is out like a light.
That's at the White House?
That's at the White House.
Yeah.
And the guy, he doesn't move. Trump is sitting there doing meet and greets and handshakes and pictures, and the guy is absolutely
passed out.
He is dead asleep, manning the crane. And I have such a great appreciation for it because he doesn't care who that is, who's around, who sees him.
And
that
he doesn't
guy is snoozing.
he's not afraid of the viz either. Like, someone can catch this. I don't care. I'm dead asleep.
I have to shut the mill down. You don't understand. It's hot. It's been a long day.
That guy had 9 Budweisers and a Big Mac for lunch, and he's like, I'm shutting it.
He was. I watched it.
Trump is 20 feet from the guy, and he is dead asleep.
Dude, that thing, that alone, that element where anyone operating a crane would comb their hair, like kind of be jazzed up and be like, I'm going to be tip-top because the president will be right in front of me.
Right.
He's comatose in the crane.
That guy is the most authentic American going. He's got his jeans on, his hard hat. Like you said, he probably had the exact power lunch he's had every single Wednesday for the last 20 years. And it could have been Margot Robbie out there handing her phone number out, and he would be asleep. Like it doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't make a difference who it is. Yeah. Trump is there in a suit at the White House, and this guy's asleep.
Outrageous.
I love that guy. We got to find that guy. Find that guy. That's Chevy guy. That's crane guy. Rick Wilde, the crane guy down in D.C. All right, Dreg's coming up here in just a moment. We got our picks as well for the Travelers. And, of course, our PGA picks are powered by TaylorMade. I've been this zero-torque putter, man, I am rolling the rock like I'm basically Jim Furyk out there. I'm Kevin Kisner. I can't get enough of it right now. It's so hot. It's so beautiful in Toronto. It's such a beautiful thing. It's going to be hot down in the Hartford area, so we'll get to our picks a little bit later on. But Dreg's coming up on what is going to be a wild offseason, and the beauty of the Cup being handed out is everyone's back in the dance now, right?
Yeah.
Like all the teams can come alive and be like, all right, we're all playing now. Where are we going to go with this?
Did you see New Jersey traded Eric Haula to Nashville?
That's a quick kind. Haula's played everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Like that guy has played for 15 teams, or it feels like it.
Yeah, he's well-traveled for sure.
He's a well-traveled individual.
Sneaky little player, though. Like I think he's a sneaky, pretty good player. The guy I am fascinated with, I mean, obviously in this market we talk about Mitch Marner and that. Nikolai Ehlers is fascinating for me. That's the guy that I think he might get a lot of interest throughout the league. Now, health is his biggest challenge, but he's a unique player. And
good player, crafty player, plays with speed. Smart player, got a bit of bite.
He's going to want 9 sheets.
Well, let's see what Dregs has to say about that. Here's Darren Dreger, our TSN Hockey Insider. Nikolai Ehlers. When you hear that name, where do you go first, Dregs?
Well, I stay in Winnipeg. Winnipeg would love to retain Nikolai Ehlers, and what's the cost? I guess we don't know the specifics of that until you fully assess what the market is, but we can all appreciate what Nick Ehlers, when healthy, can bring to a lot of teams. There's been a fair bit of speculation around the Carolina Hurricanes, what they might do, how a player like Nikolai Ehlers might fit into that dynamic, and I could see that. He's good defensively. Again, he's got that speed factor. There is a question mark because he is often hurt. I checked in one of my Winnipeg sources a couple of days ago and was told that there's nothing new on that front. And look, Ehlers, because he's earned his right to free agency, he's a different personality. Like, he's a cool cat. He's excellent in the community. He's really good in the room. He's good with the media. He ticks a lot of boxes. But there is a sense with Ehlers that he'd like to go to a place that's pretty quiet. And when I think of Winnipeg, compared to Toronto or Montreal or New York or any of the big markets, Winnipeg is small and would be pretty quiet. So if he's looking for more privacy than what he might have in Winnipeg, then that might be a challenge in terms of many that dip their toe into the market. But he'll have a strong audience if he gets to July 1.
Yeah, well, and that's ultimately the question here is how many of these guys get to July 1st? Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, Nikolai Ehlers. I'm sure there's a long list of guys who are UFAs. Do you get the impression that we could hear some news over the next, few days of teams locking in their UFAs before they even get to July 1st?
Yeah, but Brian, I don't think that we're talking about the heavier hitters here. Now, I say that, and you guys probably watched some of our post-game last night, and Bill Zito of the Florida Panthers just flat out said he intends on signing all three of his pending UFAs. I don't know where all
what does that mean, though, Dregs? Is that just kind of half in the bag kind of post-Cup talk, or what?
Not from Billy Zito. This guy is, I think we should acknowledge the work of the two general managers in Florida the last half a dozen plus years. Julian Breezeball and the Tampa Bay Lightning, when they're winning Stanley Cups, he'd go out at the trade deadline and he'd make a significant trade, a trade that brought in pieces that made Tampa Bay better. Likewise for Billy Zito and the Florida Panthers. So, when he said it, automatically I got numbers screaming through my head, and I'm trying to think of how all of this is going to work because, what was it, 10 days or so ago, you guys had Chris Johnson on, and he talked about Brad Marchand wanting 4 years at 8+ or around $8 million. Okay, well, what's Sam Bennett going to want? And then on top of that, you've got Aaron Ekblad. So I don't know how it works, but if there's a GM capable of making it work, it's Bill Zito. So, if he's got to create some room and move some pieces, then I think that he's going to do that. Now it's up to the negotiations to take place. And then when you get to closer to July 1, you decide, okay, well, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And look, right now, maybe deservedly so, Florida has the market somewhat cornered, don't they? Like, Toronto wants to change the DNA. They would have loved to get their hands on Sam Bennett. Brad Treliving, Greg Berube, they love the idea of Brad Marchand. They don't get a swing at him. If those two guys stay in Florida, that pool gets pretty shallow in a hurry for a lot of the contending teams that are hoping that the UFA market is strong.
So, Dregs, we talked about Florida. On the other side of the coin, the Edmonton Oilers, how active do you think Stan Bowman will be, with his current roster and maybe not reconstructing it, but looking to tinker and then add to the group given that they fell short?
Yeah, well, they're going to have to add, and again, the post-mortem in Edmonton would be fascinating to be a fly in the wall. Do they look at goaltending the way that the rest of us look? And it was a real tough comparison. You're talking about an elite-level proven goaltender in Sergei Bobrovsky and two guys that, are okay, and Skinner and Cal Peckard. But I still maintain that Stu Skinner is not the reason why the Edmonton Oilers didn't beat the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. There were multiple layers to the reasoning behind that. But goaltending, for me, has to be an area that they find a way or look to upgrade. They are working on a contract extension with Trent Frederic. He was real quiet and has been real quiet in Edmonton since arriving from Boston. You know, you wonder if that high ankle sprain that he had when he arrived in Edmonton, you know, hampered him throughout the course of the postseason, because he's got more grit and more upside than he was able to show for the Oilers. But that's going to be a big deal. Like, it's going to be 8 years and, you know, around $4 million per. It's not done yet, but I do get the sense that it's getting close. So now you're in the tinkering stage. But again, beyond goaltending, looking at a guy like Frederic, doesn't it feel like they've got to add more pop, like scoring and otherwise? And by the way, we haven't even talked yet about the contracts that they're facing and extensions to McDavid and Bouchard. You know, there's rumblings around Evan Bouchard. This guy is going to command upwards of $11 million per. Like, how do you pay two defensemen $20+ million in Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard with all the other areas of concern that you're going to have to wrestle with? So Stan Bowman has got a long list of needs and wants.
Darren, I know you talked about Mitch Marner possibly waiting until he kind of visits and does whatever he does. We were talking earlier about July 1st coming around and the McDavid extension. Yeah. Like, where would you see that? Would that be something that would be done immediately? I think Draisaitl, Doogie sent a note, said he signed in September. Like, right. Is that urgency stuff, or is that something that'll get done down the line in your estimation? Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's urgent, I think that Connor is going to want to take some time to decompress. Now, as I was flying back this morning, I was going back and forth with a number of people around that file. And, you know, because it's still heat of the moment, the disappointment is significant. You know, there is that sexy side to this story. What if he waits? What if he just says, no, you know what, I want to take a better look. I want to wait till the off season. I'm going to give you my thoughts as part of our exit interviews, and then let's see what management does with that. How is this team going to be different in training camp and better in training camp than the one that lost in a 6-game series to the Florida Panthers? For me, I mean, I hope that happens, because then, no different than Leon Draisaitl, you get towards September, now we're starting to wonder, okay, well, maybe they don't get it done. But that's dismissed pretty quickly, because we know that Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are joined at the hip. These two are very, very close friends. And even though you guys will tell me that, you know what, it's a business, and you want to worry about the business side and winning and all of that, I think that does matter, and I think that is a primary factor for McDavid. But I'm also then open to the possibility. I believe he's staying in Edmonton, so we're not going to be talking about this in fall. But what intrigues me is, what is the length of that contract? What is the term? You know, would he go 3-4 years? Or is he just going to saddle up and take as much money as he can on an 8-year extension? And that's where it gets, again, more intriguing. And nobody seems entirely sure as to what that possibility looks like.
With Darren Dreger, a TSN Hockey Insider. So, you know, in terms of the UFAs down in Florida, you mentioned you guys spoke with Belzito, and he's going to do what he can to keep them. But let's say they all get to July 1st. That doesn't mean that they won't re-sign in Florida or whatever. But let's say they're all there. Bennett, Ekblad, Marchand. Let's put the Leafs in focus. How many of them do you think the Leafs will call, and how many do you think will answer the call from the Leafs and be willing to listen to them?
I think all three, if they get to free agency, would be willing to listen. Why wouldn't you, right? You know, again, you know, when you get to July 1, you've earned the possibility of having as many offers on the table as you can attract, right? And Toronto has publicly stated that they're going for a different look here. And again, like, Toronto was pretty aggressive at the trade deadline, used some quality assets, and now you got to be careful on the trade front. You know, sure, you could move out some guys under contract. Some of them are problematic. You know, I think of Domi, who's got a modified no trade. I think of Morgan Riley, who's got a no move clause. All of that stuff gets prickly, doesn't it? If you're hoping to go down that path. I'm not saying they are, but when you swing and miss in free agency, if Sam Bennett doesn't want to play in Toronto, or he's now committed to staying in Florida, and sure sounded like he did. Again, he's almost intoxicated both by what's going on in the consumption, but also in the moment of winning his second consecutive Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers. He made it abundantly clear that's where he wants to stay. Mm-hmm. So then you look at Brad Marchand. And again, all the contending teams are going to be in the mix. And Brad Treliving, as we know historically, is a manager who gets his nose into everything. Everything. Like, he's talking to everybody. So I don't doubt for a second that he's going to be keenly interested in all three of those guys.
So, Dregs, we talk about the Leafs a lot, Edmonton, obviously. And is there any other Canadian team that you should say to keep an eye on? Like, for me, I circle Vancouver, but is there somebody that we should be watching that may be proactive on a dumping player scenario or being proactive bringing in players?
I would look at Vancouver. You're right, Noodles, but I would also focus on the Montreal Canadiens. I think that Kent Hughes and the Habs feel like they're in a real healthy place. And look, they're not going to abandon the notion of further developing their young players, especially on the blue line. But they look at the strides that they took, in doing what they did in the second half of the season. They got a taste, right? So I think that they're going to try and improve either their 2-3 centers in Montreal if they can, and add a little bit more scoring punch. And maybe that position covers both of those scenarios. But Kent Hughes is open for business. And when you look at the Montreal Canadiens and the capital that they have as trade bait especially, it's interesting. It is. And the other team that I mean, there's lots of teams that we can look at and talk about here, and non-Canadian. But weirdly, I got a feeling the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to do something. I'm not saying they're going to land one of the top free agents. I think it's a stretch given where the Blue Jackets are, but they have an abundance of cap space, so maybe they could be a big game player on the trade front as well. But the two Canadian teams that intrigue me the most in adding especially is Montreal and Vancouver, outside of Toronto.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what teams in the East in particular do when it comes to the benchmark that is the Florida Panthers, because you can't just bow down to them every single year.
No.
They're not going to win every year. It feels like it right now. It's just that's not reality. That's not sports. They're not going to win forever. And what I'm intrigued by is how many teams try to find a way to mimic them or get their players, and how many are like, I got to do it my own way here moving forward.
So here's the thing, Brian, and I don't know if you guys have talked about this since the end of the Leafs season, and it doesn't always have to come back to the Leafs, but in this case, you're talking about three very dynamic and I'll call them superstar players, and Matthews, Nylander, and Marner. Yeah, it seems likely, more likely than not, that Marner is out the door. But we just had a front row seat to watch the Florida Panthers in pure display of sacrifice and commitment. Right? And every player, after hoisting that cup last night, talked about, God, it's not about the individual stats. It's about playing a certain way to win the Stanley Cup. And they're not looking down at their stats line. And they're not coming off the ice disappointed, pissed off because they didn't get a pass here or there. I mean, I'm sure that there's some of that, but it's more positive than it is negative. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that, right from training camp, there was an internal competition statistically between Matthews, Nylander, and Marner. Well, that's a tough way to win. It's a tough way to win. So when you hear Brad Treliving talk about the DNA change, automatically, again, my mind goes to, okay, well, is that culture? Everyone, players included, who watched Florida do what they did to a really good team, absolutely stymied the two best players arguably in the game in McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, how do you not figure that out? How do you not go, okay, I understand. It's not about me, it's about us. And I think that's one of the hurdles that the Maple Leafs are going to have to try and overcome here.
Well, and listen, if Marner leaves, then he leaves, but Matthews and Nylander are still there, So everything you just said is pretty fascinating, because if it's, well, I got to beat this guy or that guy's, like it doesn't, like Marner may just leave and okay, that's fine, but the other guys are still there and they got to learn it and they got to figure it out. And yet they've been in the league for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if they can. I don't know if it's reasonable to expect that they will. Yeah, that's the thing, and we're not going to get answers to this until we get to next playoffs. Right. Ultimately.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
And do you get like? I know this is looking ahead, but if we had to do just on the fly, like a mini Jerry, is like, is there going to be an offer sheet? Do you think there's a chance there's an offer sheet just because, copycat and what happened? That was a perfect storm what happened to Edmonton.
Right.
Do you think that there's, at least maybe the workings of potentially?
Before you go, Dregs, I'm saying 100%. I just think with what St. Louis did last year and with what all of our guys have been saying about how everybody is excited to kind of add and there's not really sellers right now. Well, guess what? It's not exactly a cream of the crop free agent class. So what's another avenue? These guys are stupid for not utilizing this tool earlier in their campaigns. You look at the players that you could have put a team in a real bad spot. Anthony Cirelli comes up and as an example with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Somebody could have put the screws to them and had a great guy on their roster, but they just, we don't do that. Well, tough for you.
I'm with you. I mean, it's a tool in the collective bargaining agreement that has just been misused. It really has. And there's somewhat of a gentleman's agreement that, I mean, I throw it out the window. Like, come on. And Doug Armstrong did. He 100% did. And, let's go back a long way. But, I don't. Pete Chiarelli's hands were all over this from a St. Louis perspective because he works closely with Doug, and he's a sharp dude. So he was heavily involved in this. But Edmonton was so vulnerable. And I think that's the lesson, though, that comes out of losing those two good players, was that every cap team went, all right, I guess there are teams that are willing to do that. So we better make sure that we're ready to go. And that was a big part of the motivation for Chris Drury sending Chris Kreider to the Anaheim Ducks. I'm not buying that somebody was going to offer sheet Matt Rempe. Like, I think I read that on X earlier today. Like, come on. But I do know, and I was told by the New York Rangers, in fact, that was a big part of their motivation for dumping that contract and not retaining money, was so that, they could be active in free agency, but to also protect themselves in the event that somebody came targeting one of their RFAs. So I'm hoping for it too, man. It just juices up the offseason. It does, but I'm also skeptical.
Yeah, well, that's it, man. I mean, it's been available to them for 20-plus years, and it's barely ever happened, so we'll see. All right, Dregs, thanks for doing this. We'll do it again soon.
Okay, guys, have a great night.
Darren Dreger at TSN Hockey Insider. Don't forget, TSN 1050 wants to give you the ultimate iHeartRadio experience this summer at Osheaga Music and Arts Festival in Montreal. Just listen to TSN 1050 on the free iHeartRadio app for 10 minutes every day. Click enter when prompted, and you're in the draw. You'll see Olivia Rodrigo, The Killers, Gracie Abrams, and more. With Gold Weekend Passes Plus, we'll hook you up with travel thanks to TripCentral.ca, a 4-night stay at the Montreal Marriott Chateau Champlain, and $500 spending money. Listen every day for more chances to win. Details at TSN1050.ca. We'll come back with our picks for the Travelers. We'll catch up with Steve Phillips, get to our best bets. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Guys, we talked in the past about Mario Lemieux, like you got to protect him, you got to protect Connor McDavid, best players, blah, blah, blah. Why aren't they doing a better... This Caitlin Clark is getting the absolute snot beat out of her every night. Like, they're punching her in the... It's insane.
Outrageous.
Yeah, and I don't believe the league did anything. The last, kind of dust up where she got kind of smacked and then she got pushed. And
dude, she is the golden nugget of all golden nuggets. Like,
yeah, when
what
she
she's
plays,
done for that sport in that league is
crazy. The ratings, the buzz. Yeah. Like when she got injured recently, the ratings fell off a cliff.
Yes.
When she's not playing, and yet it's a difficult conversation to have because the other players are players. They don't care about Caitlin Clark. Like when you guys played, you had respect for great players, but you tried to beat them.
Yes.
And you can't just say, okay, there you go. There's the lane, Caitlin.
Okay, but
Caitlin
why is
Clark.
it always her that's getting the crap beat out of her? How come Sabrina Ionescu, how come they're never beating the crap out of her?
Well, I don't know if that's actually happening or not, but I would say that, the spotlight is on her. Anything that happens to her also goes viral immediately. Everything right. Caitlin Clark explodes. Clearly, she's the face of the league. I mean, that goes without saying. But I don't know. It's been weird. Like, there's been this resentment towards her by a lot of different current players, former players, analysts.
Angel Reese hates her.
Wow, yeah,
but she's a competitor with her. Like she's trying to beat her, and she, I don't really have as big of a problem with that. I would have a bigger issue if some like her counterpart was like, oh, she's the greatest, and what am I going to do about it? I kind of respect the athletes for trying to beat her and maybe beat her up at times, but it is on the league, I guess, to make sure everything's, within the rules.
Yeah, somewhat in the rules. I'll say this though. When Eric Lindros came into the league, that's when, you were there, I was there. Like, people were pissed with him because he did change the salary structure. He changed everything, didn't want to go to a team, all of that. People were pissed with him. But as a player, I respected him because he dragged a lot of salaries up. He did change the dynamic, right? Like, these people, these particular ladies in WNBA should be thankful. I mean, they're making bank, a lot of them, because Caitlin Clark is helping with generate revenue. That would be my,
Yeah, but again, on the field, like Lindros got hit a lot and fought, and like Scott Stevens didn't say, hey, you made me more money. You tried to kill him every time he was on the ice.
You're right. You're right.
So, it's just not reasonable to expect other athletes to say thank you so much all the time. Yeah. They're going to go after her. Like, that's the way it's going to be. All right, Jays back in action tonight. Bichette hits a bomb to tie it up in the ninth, and then Addison Barger absolutely leans into one last night and hits a walk-off home run, first of his career. They switched up the order. It's Bo into Barger into Vladdy. Vladdy was great last night. There's a lot of positive mojo around this team right now. Here's Steve Phillips, our TSN Baseball Insider. We'll ask you the Addison Barger question again. It's a weekly occurrence. What is this guy, and at what point do we realize, or are we ever going to realize, he's the real deal, and this is actually happening, and he's someone that they can rely on every night?
Yeah, boy. I mean, what a game, what a win that was for them. And I still, I need to see more finesse from him. Like, I see him bully baseballs, but the question is, can he make adjustments? And I think back to Davis Schneider when he first came up a couple of years ago. Like, he tore it up when he first came up a couple of years ago. But then when he got the opportunity the next time around, when the league made that adjustment to him, he didn't have another place to go. But first of all, I love Barger as a guy. Like, he plays hard. He's gritty. He's a tough guy. He's, the teammates seem to like him a lot. And so, I think that he's given them some of what they need right now. But, on a consistent basis, can he not chase? Can he keep the pitcher in the zone? Is something that, because he's going to start getting fed a bunch of breaking balls. Now, he's showing he can hit the fastball. He's going to start getting a lot of breaking stuff and pitches with a wrinkle in it. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can make the appropriate adjustments to lay off those, first of all.
And then if they, throw him in the zone, can he keep his hands back and drive it?
Steve, it's been a positive vibe for the Jays. The last little while here, there's been a bunch of comeback wins. They're playing with, they're bringing a certain excitement level. When does the conversation, can you take us behind the curtain of the conversation, when does that start? And the GM's approach to ownership on what they can and cannot do come trade deadline. Like, is the team for real? What's the belief of both ownership and GM and how that transaction goes down?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I think that it's different for every organization in the involvement of the owners, the willingness of the owners, the desire to win is different in every organization. What is successful? Is it winning or is it making money? It's different in every organization. But what's not different is the job of the general manager is to manage up the organizational chart as much as it is to manage down the organizational chart. And so, I think you're at a point where you start talking ownership and saying, this is who we are. I think we're going to need to upgrade here. The injuries have hit us in this area. I think we need to build some depth in that area. So you're starting to have some of those conversations already just to set the tone on what the needs are. And, each organization is a little different. Like sometimes the owner will say, okay, well, you've got this kind of money to go get somebody. Or they'll say, well, bring it all to me and I'll let you know whether there's money for it. Now, those are the owners who say, I don't pick the players at all. I let my front office pick the players. But what they do is the money's available for the guys that they want, and the money's not available for the guys that they don't. So in the end, they're really the ones picking the players. They just don't want to have culpable deniability, plausible deniability that it's not them picking the players. And so, but I do think that there's some of those conversations are starting right now. It's a little unclear who's available. So a lot of it would be, this player might be available depending upon where this team goes. We might have some interest in this guy. And you start playing out scenarios about where you might be able to go with different things. And then you hope the owner will start to come around with, we've got a certain amount of money available. What can you get for this kind of money? And you start laying it out there a little bit. And then if, you have something that you want that's making more money than you have available, what can you do to get that other team to eat some of the money but to make a deal? And so you never discount anything. That's how I did it. Like there were some teams who say, well, I don't want to go after this player. I don't want to go after a player who's represented by Scott Boras. This team's too hard to deal with. I'm like, literally there was a time that teams would say, I'm not making deals with that team. I don't even call that team. And I'm like, I relished calling everybody and, tried to find a way. But there really were teams that general managers said, I never call that guy. That guy, he's a hot mess. I can't get him to focus on anything. He doesn't remember what we talk about. This guy always says no all the time. And I would never eliminate anybody. I never eliminated an agent, never eliminated a general manager. My job was trying to figure out what they need, trying to understand their needs and what they need to hear, and try to match up with them. And so there were a couple times that I made trades at the deadline where other general managers said, how the heck did you do that? Like, how did you? I can never get a deal done with that guy. And I'm like, well, you gotta play it out. And I think Ross is more like that. He'll talk to everybody. He's not going to in any way, eliminate any one team. But in back in the day, there were many a team that would just not deal with certain other clubs.
Was there any vulnerabilities known about other general managers? Like, would there be one guy that you knew would have 2 bottles of wine in him after dinner, and it might be a good time to chat, like stuff like that?
I think that there are, I think that's the key, right? In any negotiation is to know the person on the other side of the table. Know their needs, know their team, know their personality. And so for me, most everybody was, pretty clean living when I was going through it. But they did have, tendencies. Dave Dombrowski liked lists. He wanted a list of players from which he could choose from. He wanted a player to be named later in the deal that he could then send the scouts out to further watch some players to figure out which of the 3 players on that that list that he liked better than others. There were other general managers who said no to everything initially because it bought them some time to be able to go back to their people, and he didn't feel committed, but he would go back and talk to his people and come back and say, that suggestion you made there, I would do it. There were other teams that wanted only upper level players. Some only wanted, there were some who knew exactly what they wanted, and they would say, okay, I'll do this guy, and this guy. Like that. You knew whether you had a deal done with them or not. But really understanding the other general managers is a huge part of getting a deal done, and knowing, what their quirks are, what their styles are. There were some who always wanted to be the one at the end to say yes or no, as opposed to the one making an offer, that you needed to make them offer. Some like to make phone calls, some didn't. I remember Dan Duquette, when he was with Boston, Dan would get on the phone and was notorious for not talking. Like, he wouldn't say anything. He would only want to gather information. He would never want to share information. And I remember that there was a time when Dan Duquette called Kevin Towers in San Diego. Kevin got on the phone, and they both sort of said hello, and then they both sat there waiting for the other one to talk. And then Kevin Towers, about 5 to 10 minutes into it, it's like, all right, well, nice to catch up with you. And they got off the phone because neither, Kevin Towers like, I'm not going to talk if he's not going to talk. And Dan Duquette just would wait it out and not say anything, hoping to get more information than he would give.
What do you need to see from Max Scherzer for that you're comfortable on the pathway back?
Yeah, I think it's less about what he does. Well, first, either complete a game or let the manager take you out, but don't take yourself out of the game, right? That's number one, that at least you're through the time that you were in the game. You were able to pitch whatever your capability allowed you to, and then be okay the next day between starts. Because I think that, making the start is one thing, but the recovery's where he's had the difficulty. That, the thumb, creeps up on him and is an issue for it. And, I'm not sure that he's ever going to get that behind him. And so I'm worried that thumb will heal, because it's been a lingering issue now for a couple of years. And if it hasn't gone away in a couple of years, then I'm not sure it's going to go away. So, and he always talks about how it's so important to arm health, the grip of the ball and that recovery period. And so it's got to be go out there, pitch, and do your thing, but also let's see how you feel the next day.
All right, Steve, we'll leave it there. Enjoy the games tonight. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for this.
All right. I loved hearing you guys break down the WNBA and Caitlin Clark and all that. That was pretty good breakdown right there, guys. Nice
We're on
job.
Top of everything here, man. There's nothing that can get past us.
I love it.
We're on top of it.
I love it. They do go after her, though. Holy smokes, man.
They sure do, man.
They got to put a stop to it, Steve, and I'm going to make sure it happens.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I feel bad, and then when I see her put her arms out, what did I do? Then I kind of understand why they go after her a little bit.
Yeah, she plays coy.
Well, I didn't do it. Yeah, she plays it up a little bit too, but she's a great player, and they're getting a lot more play because she's in the league.
Big time, big time. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, guys, you got it. We'll see you.
Steve Phillips, our TSN baseball insider. Yeah, Caitlin Clark's a phenom, man. There's no other way to put it. Absolute phenom.
There's an Instagram account. I don't know if you guys have seen it, that they track Angel Reese's first shot. Apparently she goes she throws bricks, apparently her first one. And it's
not a strong shooter.
15
Angel.
games in a row. It's and so they film themselves, and here's her first shot, and of course it doesn't go in, and they're all high-fiving. And she acknowledged it. Apparently she found out about it and went on her Instagram or TikTok or whatever and responded to them. So it was kind of funny. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, listen, she's a household name now too, right? A great college player, good player in the WNBA, but that's a good thing to have rivalries, man. She's not on the level of Caitlin Clark. That's the issue. She's not as good, but
I think she's insanely jealous of the coverage of Caitlin Clark.
Clark gets. I think that's a. Listen,
a
Clark is getting more coverage than anyone in the history of women's basketball,
and totally deserves it. Totally deserves it.
Listen, the ratings, the generating of attention and money and sponsors and all that would suggest that is true. Best Bet's coming up, and we'll get to our Travelers picks. We'll do that next.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, the Overdrive PGA picks are brought to you by TaylorMade. When you need more performance, distance, and speed from your golf ball, it's time to switch. Learn more about the all-new TP5 and TP5X at TaylorMadeGolf.ca. TaylorMade's just got so many great products right now. The ball's amazing. This zero-torque Spider putter.
I told you, if there's one different club you got to get in your bag, you have to try that.
It's absolutely insane. I am Jack Nicklaus out there rolling putts. Anyway, let's get to our picks. So you've established you want Rory. I'll take Scheffler. I'm taking the past champ. I'll give you the first pick, or this third pick. All right, let's keep this kind of on the rails here, about a 5-pack.
I'm going to go down the list a little bit for a guy that always plays well here, and he's been a little bit quiet. Actually, what am I doing? I'll take the past champion, Keegan Bradley.
Whoa,
okay, you're taking Keegan. All right, you're on Keegan Bradley. I'm going to take a guy who was in the hunt last week. I'm going to take Victor Hovland.
Brutal, dude. The guy's got serious problems.
Does he? He was in the second last pairing at the US
I'm going to
Open
take a guy that I have difficulty watching because he's one of the slowest golfers in the history of the universe. But he plays well on this track, and his name is Mr. Cantlay.
Patrick Cantlay.
Whoa.
All right, I'll take Colin Morikawa. Colin Morikawa. It's not 1-on-2 in a long time. Neither is Cantlay. These two guys are always a lock for the Ryder Cup. They haven't won anything in years. It's kind of strange, but Colin Morikawa. Go ahead.
I'm going to take a guy that has been – you just gifted him to me. They call him the X-Man.
Xander Schauffele.
X-Man.
Okay. I'll take a guy. I'll take someone that this is going to set you off. Bob McIntyre. I will take Robert McIntyre. Bob McIntyre, he loves a good field, a quality field. You get depth in the field, Bob McIntyre's in the hunt.
Bobby, call Peter Millar and get some gear on you.
Yes, I know. I know.
It's like every major Nike tries to just promote the new worst clothing of all. It's awful on all of them.
His hats look like his dog uses them as a chew toy.
I know. It looks like he steals his hat from a trucker on the highway and says, "I got to wear that on the tour."
The guy who fell asleep at the White House is supplying clothing for Bob McIntyre.
Jesus.
All right. Who else?
Here's a guy. I like Pendy. I'm going to take Pendy.
Ooh, I like that. Taylor Pendrith. All right, Pendy. I'm going to continue to go off the board. I'm going to give you two more and I'm out. Then you have one more. Okay?
All right.
I'm going to take Daniel Berger, and I'm going to take Maverick McNeely. I'm going long shots. I got Scotty, and I'm sniffing around the edges here.
I'm going to take a guy that's won there before. And you know what his name is?
Jim Furyk.
Giordano Spieth.
Oh, get out of here.
Dude, he played good on the weekend, man. He's won there. I think he's getting his jam back. I'm going to take Giordano Spieth.
Okay.
And you know who else? I'm going to take Benny Griffin. Benny Griff's my new guy, man. I love Benny Griffin.
All right. Now, do you have one more pick than me now? I guess you might.
Yeah.
I can't take J.J. Spawn. I'm not doing it. I can't. Did I take Daniel Berger yet? I'll take the Burger. I'll take Hamburger. Daniel, I already have him? Okay.
Yeah.
What other Canadians in? Connors is in. He's hurt.
I need one more guy who
I don't even know.
If Nick,
I'll take Nick Taylor or
take Nick Taylor.
I'll take Nick Taylor. Okay, we're done. That's enough.
I want Denny McCarthy. He rolls the rock there.
All
Denny McCarthy.
Fine, take him. Like, who else can I take?
Yeah, exactly.
Ludwig. I'll take Ludwig. Like,
I know a guy that you like.
Dude.
I know a guy that you like. He does wear two gloves. He's also very slow. Aaron Rye.
I don't mind Aaron Rye. I'm not taking him, but I don't mind him. If he plays well, I'll take him. PGA Picks brought to you by TaylorMade. When you need more performance, distance, and speed from your golf ball, it's time to switch. Learn more about the all-new TP5 and TP5X at TaylorMadeGolf.ca.
NHL season's over, boys. Give me your biggest takeaway from the 2024-2025 season. Jamie.
I mean, a week ago, Florida is the gold standard. Like, actually, the state of Florida is the gold standard for hockey now.
Yeah, that's so sickening to me that the state of Florida.
Well, I mean,
it's like the home of hocky.
7 people watch the game.
You want to go? I'll go a step further. Is you can spend $10 million on a goaltender and win, because I know Vasilevsky's 9.5, but like, you do need goaltending.
Yeah, but you got to find the right guy to pay, right?
There's only 3 of them in the world that are worth $10 million.
Yeah, I know. Agreed.
That's the problem. Like, if you can't get your hands on one of them, you're in big trouble.
Dude, goaltender depth worldwide is a problem.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. This was the year of the state tax conversation, kind of the rubber hitting the road. That was it. You just said it. The state of Florida is the home of hockey. It'll show its head here. If Bennett signs for like $7.8 million, then I don't see how Bettman can't immediately come out and have to explain that.
He'll get something with an 8 in it, I think, if he signs there.
But even that. Now that again, it might work out, but the numbers will be, well, that's 10.5 in Toronto. It's like, okay, well, then you get to keep Sam Bennett for 8.25 because it's the same money. All right, Best Bets powered by FanDuel. I'm going to go with the over in the ball game tonight. The Jays' bats have been alive. You've got a couple of pitchers on the mound that I don't think are going to go deep in this game. I think the bullpens are going to be used. I'm taking the over in the ball game tonight. Best Bets powered by FanDuel. All right. Well, tomorrow we got Game 6 of the NBA Finals, and we got the Jays. We got the Travelers starting. And we move towards the NBA draft and the NHL draft, right? Yep. Like, it's coming quick, man. And then free agency right behind that. So it'll be a fun couple of weeks. All right, thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web, and, of course, up on YouTube Live on TSN's YouTube channel. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
4 p.m.
We'll chat then.